What's happening, everybody? This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat, and welcome to the 16th episode of the Slapstream, live from Slapsville. And it seems that lots of you are interested in Psychobilly. I'm trying to present all kinds of genres with slap-based technique, but I got a feeling that there's more and more people interested in Psychobilly. So I decided to feature another Psychobilly slap bass player pretty soon. Just a couple weeks ago, I had Kim Necroman from the Necromantics, and response was amazing. So I decided to feature one of the originators, one of the first guys who was there at the very beginning of the scene, of the birth of the scene and the birth of the genre, and definitely the guy who was one of the most influential to newer Psychobilly bass players, who brought that speed, and he had like a little tricks that I always loved when I was a kid. And he was in quite a few bands. I want to mention Sharks, I want to mention Frenzy, and if that's not enough, Restless and Blue Cats. And before I introduce him, I would like to thank you for all your support over these couple of months since I started this in the beginning of June. There's more and more people subscribing. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. I know that everybody says that, but it's very, very important for the YouTube algorithm. If you want to, people like to see these stuff, and I definitely want to influence younger players and help them out find legit information. So please hit that subscribe button. And all right, there's quite a few people here. Let me just make sure that everybody can hear me. Can you hear me? Just say something over there. Just live chat. And I will ask you when my guest joins, I will ask you like to tell me if the levels are correct, because we are doing the sound check, but there's no way for us to check that if both of us are in the correct level. So I'm really excited about this episode. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and if you feel like supporting, check out the donation links and the Patreon, very important. And oh yeah, and the great news, YouTube just approved super stickers and super chat for this channel. So right under the live chat, you have the option for more support. You have an option to super chat, and I think that it features the comment a little bit differently. I think it's pretty cool. So if you feel inclined to do that, please do that. I would like to see how that works, or these super stickers. And I would like to thank our designer, Fernando from Buenos Aires, who is now Fernando from Barcelona. He moved there with his family a couple weeks ago. And that's the reason why all these slap streams look cool. And without further ado, I want to introduce the legend of Psychobilly and Neo-rockabilly genre, one of my favorite bass players from the 80s, Steve Whitehouse.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes.
I'm really glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor. It's an honor.
All right. First, I'd like to ask our audience, so quite a few of you here already, if you hear both of us fine, and if
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
If you need us to adjust anything, should be okay, but just in case. So how have you been? How are you holding up during this end of the world thing?
Crazy times, Djordje. It's I don't know. I don't know if I'm holding up or not, really. It's killed the gigs, killed my music career temporarily, I hope. But I'm surviving. Been doing a few little videos for Facebook, and on Thursday night we had a frenzy rehearsal, so that was pretty cool. A little bit of normality for a few hours, but I'm doing okay. Me and the family are doing okay. We're trying to make the best of it and lead our lives as normally as we can for the time being, at least.
Yeah, that's the most important. It really, nobody expected that. You know, I had like a full year full of touring. I believe that we were supposed to play Pineda, the Psychobilly meeting,
Yeah,
both of our bands, right?
yeah. Forensic was supposed to be playing, and the Blue Cats were supposed to be playing, and of course I was supposed to be bass teching there as I do. I spoke to Raquel, one of the promoting team, and we were trying to make it work so that it could be the first festival that could go ahead, but we just didn't realize it was going to go on for so long as it has with all this COVID stuff. And so we had to call it and say that it was postponed till next year.
Nobody expected this. Yeah, but we're all in it together.
Yeah,
I really like your Facebook videos. You should do that more often.
Yeah, the sad thing about all this is that I've had to go back to being a full-time construction worker, as you call it, or a builder, as we call it over here, and it's got very busy. I'm happy in one way that it has, and sad in another. So I've been trying to get out of the building industry since 2005, and there is always something to drag me back into it. So yeah, I'm very busy like that, but unfortunately, it's not in the right ways. But there you go.
Absolutely. I mean, these days, any of us who has any kind of job should be considered lucky, I guess.
Yeah. That's one advantage of being self-employed. You can find work if you try hard.
All right, let's get to our regular Slapstream talk. I would like to know, what was your first inspiration? How did you find out that you want to be a bass player and a slap bass player? What was the first thing that kind of brought you to that style of playing?
Well, I remember it vividly. I mean, we spoke about it very quickly the other day. I was 5 years old and living in the town that I still live in today, in Frome in Somerset, in the UK. And I heard this wonderful sound coming from the front room of the house. Now, I heard it before because my dad was an old teddy boy and liked all the usual suspects from the 50s. But for some reason, this time, at 5 years old, it dawned on me that the sound was really fantastic. It registered for the first time, let's say. And I walked into the front room and I stood there for a couple of minutes and I said to my dad, what is that fantastic sound in the background? It sounds rhythmical. What is it? Is it the drums or what? And he picked up the album cover, and the album was Rock Around the Clock. I'm not sure if it was the original version or a re-release, but he pointed at Marshall Lytle from Bill Haley and the Comets, and he said, it's that guy there, and he's hitting that bass as well as playing the notes, and he's hitting it with his hands. And I listened a little bit more and loved it even more and said, I remember it now, I looked up at my dad, who seemed really huge back then, and I said, one day, Dad, I'm going to do that. And I did. It took me a few more years, but I eventually got there and bought an old double bass, or ended up with an old double bass, and started to learn how to play. Unfortunately, my dad died when I was 11, a couple of years before I started playing the double bass, so he never saw me do it, but hopefully he has in some way or another seen me start to play the slap bass.
I'm sure he would be happy to see you slapping like Marshall Lytle.
Yeah.
I had an honor to. What is it?
He's still my biggest hero. Marshall's still my biggest hero.
Oh, yeah, wow.
I was lucky enough to meet him 2006 at the King Bass workshops in California. And the first thing I said to him was, I really want to shake that hand that did that slapping, if that's okay with you. So we were both there to pick up our sponsorship double basses from King Bass on the same day. And so I was really, really pleased that I got to meet him once, you know. But then things changed. I got influenced by other people, but I guess we'll talk about that in a minute.
Absolutely. You know, I actually had a chance to interview Marshall Lytle a few years ago. I mean, maybe a year or two before he passed. And he replied on, I had 50 questions for him.
Okay.
And I asked him, hey, you can answer as many as you want. You know, none of that.
A lot of questions.
Yeah, and then he's just like, oh no, it's all good. You know, and he answered all of them, and that interview is on the artofslapbass.com, and it's one of the interviews that I'm the most proud of. It's really
Check that out. Yeah. I mean, he
it's
was
really
fantastic. And all, you know, I met the guy who did some of the production work on the early Bill Haley stuff. I was at CTS Studios in London, and we were mastering or cutting the Hall of Mirrors album for Nervous Records. And with Boppin' Bob, I don't know if you remember all those early Nervous Records albums had Boppin' Bob scratched into the out groove. And they both said to me they had a surprise for me that day. And apparently the guy was producing the London Philharmonic Orchestra or something in a studio in CTS Studios at Wembley. And they took me down afterwards. And the thing I remember most actually is he had terrible gout, and he had his foot all wound up in bandages and resting up on a stool. And he was really happy. I can't remember the guy's name. I'm terrible with names as I get older. But we sat in this massive studio mixing suite, massive desk in front, and he was telling me all about how they did those original recordings and where they positioned everybody within the room to get that sound, because obviously it was different recording techniques than it is today. There was a couple of mics in the whole room, and how far you stood away and how close you stood to the mic was how loud you were in the mix within reason. And he told me that they recorded Marshall's bass. He had his own microphone. I think it was maybe one of three. And they had it just in front of the F-hole, massive, great ribbon mic. And he had a little acoustic shield in front of it. And they just recorded it with one big ribbon mic. And I just said, how did it sound so fantastic? And he said, I think most of that was the technique and the player. So that was always good. But it was nice to speak to somebody who was involved with the production of those records that I'd first heard when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Absolutely. Marshall was special, and that sound was really influential. But interesting enough, like, by my opinion, the guy that played with Bill Haley before Marshall and after Marshall, named Al Rex, had very, very similar sound. And if you listen to some of those comments recordings after Marshall left the band, I believe like Saints Rock and Roll, for example, that's Al Rex.
Yeah.
Still great sound, and you know, another great player that unfortunately doesn't get enough credits. But
didn't he pass away recently as well?
He did. Yes, he did last year.
Yeah.
I talked to him on the phone. I tried to convince him to do an interview, but you know, it did not happen.
Didn't happen. That's a shame. It was Jason Burns from King Bass that told me about who played on the different songs.
Oh, okay.
Of the Comets period. I didn't know who done what. I don't think it's very well documented, to be honest. I didn't know who played on what at the time, but yeah, Jason actually told me who played on some of the different tracks.
He is actually here,
isn't it? Don't you find it's very similar? Like you said, the sound was similar.
Very similar. Yeah, I think that they were using this exact same technique, and Bill Haley kind of he was the boss, so he was the one.
Well, I was told by Marshall that Bill is the guy that showed both of them how to play the slap technique that he wanted in the band, because Bill was a really good bass player himself.
I wanted to mention that, but you know, and I thought that was true, but that's not true.
Is it not true?
And the reason for that, why I know it's not true, is because Al Rex was playing bass before that, but it's true that Marshall Lytle was saying that story.
Okay.
So
Marshall told me that too.
Apparently Marshall, knew how to, spice up things a little bit. But I got in touch actually with musicians that Al Rex played before back in the day. So it's. I
guess stories get embellished a lot over 50 or 60 years.
But it is what it is. I have a question for the audience. Like, a couple of you guys told me that I'm echoing Carolyn and Dave. So if you guys don't mind telling me,
is it both of us
echoing? That'll be. Please let me know.
I can't. You're not echoing to me.
I'm not.
No, it's not.
Oh,
Echo.
okay. You know what? Like, I know what might be the case. If you don't mind, like, turning down the monitor on your end, the one that you're hearing me, they
Okay.
might be hearing that.
Just 1 second. Yeah, so you might be getting a little bit of feedback coming through. Just bear with me.
Exactly.
Hopefully this is taking it down a little bit.
And Dave Gordon mentioned Giddy Up a Ding Dong, Bill Haley live on stage playing slap bass.
Yes, I've seen that video. I've seen that. That's great. And he's got some really serious slap pegs on, flopping about with the rhythm. I love that video.
Yes. Oh, and we got a first super chat from Betty L. Thank you, Betty. And she has a question for you. Empty or almost empty bottle of Jack?
Let's have a look. It's only a small one. It's 2/3 left. Where are we? There's 2/3 of it left in there. So I've started
on until the end. Until the end of the show.
I'll put it there. I'm going to keep it there because it seems to be getting some attention. There's always a bottle of Jack when I'm around.
Yeah, it's a little bit too early. You know, last time when I was drinking Jack Daniels in the morning was when I was touring with Lemmy. So it was
good old Lemmy. He knows how to have a good breakfast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Breakfast champions.
Well, it's 7:20 in the evening in the UK, so I think I'm entitled to a nice Jack.
Absolutely. Well, cheers. You're always. So cheers, man. One thing that people, I'm not sure how much your fans and frenzy fans are aware of. You know, most of the Psychobilly guys are aware of your involvement in the Sharks, but before that, you had a band, Shaking Quiffs, right?
Yeah, that was my school band, the Shaking Quiffs. Yeah.
How old were you when you started?
Oh, blimey, 13, 14.
13.
Yeah, there was actually a band before that. There was 2 rockabillys in my school. I was one of them, and another guy called Gavin. And he was playing bass guitar in a punk band. And we wanted to do something rockabilly. And the only way we could think of doing the rockabilly band was I joined the punk band just as a singer, because originally I was just a singer. And then we would forcibly morph it into a rockabilly band. So that's what we did. And the band originally, I believe, was called Suicide. Not a brilliant name. And then I think we toyed with the idea of the name The Stiff Kittens, which is also pretty pants. And then we finalized it as the Shaking Quiffs. So the punk guitarist that was in the band hated the fact that we were changing it into a rockabilly band. We were sneaking more and more rockabilly songs into the set. We were doing school discos and school assembly meetings in our school. So he left the band, the punk guitarist, and Gavin was a really good guitar player as well. So he moved over onto guitar. And the way that I started to originally play double bass in a band was we needed a double bass player or a bass player. And I said I'd do it. And I'd never played double bass before. We bought the old school double bass that has been languishing in the music room cupboards for 20 years with 1 string on it and a massive split down the back. And the bass was called Horace. I still own that bass, actually, after all these years. And I locked myself away in my bedroom for 6 weeks. I think we had 6 weeks between the punk guitarist leaving and our first gig at the British Legion in Frome. And so I locked myself in my room with a load of flexi discs of blues and bass runs. And then I came out and did my first gig, and we did a few rehearsals. And I did my first gig 6 weeks later. So yeah, as the fully fledged Shaking Quiffs. Long time ago, bloody hell.
And how old were you with that first band? 13?
Yeah, 13, yeah.
And that's when you started to play upright bass?
Yeah. When I was 13.
Oh wow. That's the same age when I started. I was 13.
Yeah, it's a good age. Unlucky
it is a good age.
Lucky for others. The bass, that bass that I bought when I was that age, and we did the Shaking Quiffs with, is the bass that I recorded all the hits, if you want to use those words, all the well-known Sharks and Frenzy stuff. So all the Phantom Rockers album and the Hall of Mirrors album and Icy Red. That was all recorded on that same bass that I bought with Gavin from the school music rooms in 1980 something. 1980.
Wow. 1980.
Yeah, and still got the bass at home even now. It's been rebuilt a few times and it's a completely different color now. But yeah, still, I'll never. If there's one thing that's going to get buried with me when I pop my clogs, it's going to be that double bass for sure.
Oh, really? Okay. Is that based on any of the album covers?
Yeah. So when you see the red, white, and blue stars and stripes on the Phantom Rockers album, that's Horace after it had been painted. What other album covers is it on? I don't really remember actually, but it's
too many.
2 or 3 is but definitely the Phantom Rockers album, and it was used to record that whole thing. Yeah,
that album is so influential, and I love that album. I'll ask you more about it later on, but I want to be focused a little bit at the beginning.
Sure.
On the beginning of your career. So right after Shaking Quiffs, you joined the Sharks.
Yeah, so there's a story with that. I try and stay politically correct with it all. The Shaking Quiffs, we went up to do some recordings for Nervous Records. We did a cassette demo in our school music rooms where we all met. The music teacher was really cool and decided that because we were doing something, moving forward with music, which I guess a lot of people weren't doing then, that he would install a 4-track recording studio in the music rooms, G-Block music rooms at Frome College. And so we made the most of it, recorded maybe 5 or 6 tracks there as a demo, put them onto a cassette, sent them to Nervous Records, and that culminated in 1 or 2 tracks on the Stack of Records vinyl album. But, I just knew that it wasn't right for me. We changed drummers and we had Hodge with us then, and I knew I wanted to do something more. I was watching a local music program on HTV, local music station, and I saw a live show by a band called the Dixie Rebels. Well, that was the what did they call that venue? I can't remember the name of the venue. Getting old. But it was going out live, and I thought the guitarist looked really cool. Was playing well, was singing well, and the 2 guys playing bass and drums looked like insurance salesmen. And I thought, I think he could do better than that. And myself and the drummer were ready. We had upright bass, and we wanted to move on. So I phoned the TV station and asked for the guy's number, and they wouldn't give it to me. But they said, if you give me your telephone number, we'll pass it on to him. A couple of days later, I had a phone call from Alan Wilson, and he said, can you record some stuff of you playing the slap bass? So I stood in front of my cassette player and played it along for maybe half an hour or something, sent it to him. And he called me and he said, I think we should do something. So we got together at his house, did a few songs, a few standards. No, it wasn't his house, actually. It was a small shop. He was running a small music shop in Midsummer Norton. We found it gelled. We'd already signed a deal to do an album with the Shaking Quiffs with Nervous Records. I didn't particularly want to do that. So we phoned Roy Williams at Nervous, a landline telephone, old fashioned. We put it on the counter of the shop and we played 2 or 3 songs to him. When I went back to the phone, he was screaming his head off with excitement. And I said, so this is the new band. We're called the Sharks. Do you want to do anything with this? And he said, I'm just going to transfer the whole record deal from the Shaking Quiffs to the Sharks. And that was it. The deal was done. And we were recording within a few weeks, rehearsing like crazy, writing, recording, and in various studios that ended up being the album Phantom Rockers.
That's a cool story. I met Alan last year when he came to see Tiger Army when I played. I forgot where. Was it Bristol or somewhere? But
yeah,
it was somewhere down there on the island. It's a great story. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that lots of people would enjoy it.
So when Frenzy supported Tiger Army at the Electric Ballroom in London, do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Alan and Hodge were there as well. That
cool.
Same night in London. Yeah. So
I haven't seen him. Yeah, I haven't seen him that night, but I saw him in Bristol. You got
Yeah.
like a couple questions. Let me, because it's piling up, so I'll ask you right now before I miss any of these. Lots of greetings, lots of everything.
I keep looking at the camera, then looking up at you. I always used to get told off on TV shows for looking at the monitor and not looking at the camera. I'm trying to. It's weird.
You know, on my show, you can do whatever you want to. Marco mentioned Steve told me about his first days playing the slap bass, going with it by feet on his shoulders all through his city just to practice with the band.
Actually, what it was when we took the bass from the school, I walked across. Where I went to school was on completely the opposite side of my town to where I lived, and I paid, or myself and Gavin paid 60 quid for the double bass, and I walked it across on my shoulder from the school to home because my mother couldn't pick me up that evening with the car, so I just wanted to get it home so we could say it was ours, it was a lot of stops, I can tell you, because I was only small, and the bass was pretty big.
You know, I have a similar story when my parents bought me the bass, you know, when I was 13 as well. And then, you know, when I got it, like, it was the opposite part of the town. And I was so afraid to go, you know, into a public transportation. I didn't have money for the cab. So, like, you know, I just walked with it.
Yeah.
It took me a while. But
And
I was so happy.
All the early gigs that we did as well, even with Frenzy, we were all too young to drive. We were very young. The first European tour I did, I was 16 years old with the Sharp. And I always used to take the bass. My mother would drop us off at Bath Spa railway station, and I couldn't afford a proper bass case for it, and it was wrapped up in 2 sleeping bags that had been ripped open and then wrapped up with gaffer tape. And she would drop us at the station. We would take the train up to London, and then we would put the double bass and all our rest of our equipment into a London black cab, go across to Liverpool Street Station where the boat train was, and we would take the train down to Harwich, up to Harwich, walk off with the double bass as well, walk to the port, and then walk it onto the ship, do the crossing of the North Sea, and then walk it off the other end until we got into the promoter's car. And that I had to carry the thing manually the whole time, long before I was driving, long before we had vans or anything like that. So yeah, those were the days.
But nothing was hard back then, right?
It was the excitement and the enthusiasm meant everything.
Absolutely.
You just had to get to the shows, to the festivals and the gigs. Yeah.
Nothing better than tour and, you know, play for people.
Yeah.
Something that we miss these days. You have a question from Eric de Bruhen. Hi, Steve. What's the status for the new Blue Cats and Rust in the Machine albums?
Hi, Eric.
Utrecht.
Yeah. Utrecht. Fantastic. We used to spend a lot of time in Utrecht. In the Hotel Aui. I don't know if Eric remembers that. That's where we used to base ourselves when we were touring Holland. The Hotel Aui. Funny the things you remember. So, Blue Cat's new album. It's pretty much written. We're just working out our medium that we're going to release it on. So obviously Blue Light Records released the last Blue Cats album. That is still in discussion. We're not quite sure. There's also some chat between the guys in the band that we might self-release so that we don't lose the rights to it, because these days the rights to your music is really important, more so than ever, I think. But anyway, the album is written. We haven't got together for any rehearsals. We should have done something about that by now, but all this pandemic has meant that we can't get together. We normally get together and rehearse quite a lot with the Blue Cats, but it's not happened. But it's definitely written. I know that the 3 guys have got together and done some rough running through. There's some fantastic material because I've heard it. I've heard the demos. So I'm looking forward to doing that. It's going to be real soon. As soon as all this rubbish is over with, that's affecting us all right now, we're gonna make a final decision on the way we're moving forward, and then we're going to do it. We've also got the Blue Cats are going to be releasing some really early demos and unreleased early recordings very soon. We've priced everything up. We're going to be definitely releasing that on our own label, and I've heard that. some stuff that even I haven't heard after being with the band nearly 10 years. And I was going fishing with Clint from the Blue Cats, and he played me the stuff all mastered and edited. And wow, there's some fantastic stuff on there. So that's something to look forward to. Vinyl only, first of all, different colored vinyls. So lots of collectible stuff, lots of unseen photographs. So that's something to look forward to, Eric. The Rust in the Machine Frenzy album, that's been written for more than 7 years. It's very difficult nowadays, even before what's going on now. Small labels have been dying in their droves. The physical record release is on its knees because of the hideous download rubbish that I can't stand. I've never downloaded a song in my life, and I never will. I prefer physical and something you can hold in your hand, and a record that you can see and enjoy. But anyway, so there's not a lot of record labels that have got a lot of money to put into doing stuff. The thing is, when you've recorded at a high level in a studio before, it's difficult not to be at that level anymore and think you're falling backwards by doing less quality material. So we want to have the same quality. We want to be able to do it with the same level and the same money to put into it. We've been working hard with that, but there's not a lot of labels with much money. We're definitely going to self-release, therefore, the next Frenzy album, Rust in the Machine. It is pretty much written, bar maybe one song. We've made some, actually the studio I'm sat in now doing all this broadcast to you, I've done a deal to buy some Mac material computers and a Logic system so we can start recording the album ourselves. Bought a lot of new microphones, and we're going to build a studio in my workshops. So I think that's the way forward, but it might take a little time. So please bear with us, but both of those things are definitely coming.
That's great. You know, people are excited about new music and new vinyl. I'm excited too. I always loved, you know, Blue Cats, and I always loved Frenzy. So
thanks, man.
Can't wait.
Being in the Blue Cats for me is a real privilege. They were one of my favorite bands, if not my totally favorite band in the 80s.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. When they asked me to join the band in March 2011, I was more than happy to do so. And I am actually officially the longest serving Blue Cats bass player now. I'm sure Clint's at home watching this laughing because I've said that. But I am really, really proud of that fact. Yeah, 10 years March.
That's so cool. And who are the bass players before you, if you don't mind mentioning those guys?
Okay, well, obviously the first lineup of the Blue Cats is Blue Cat Trio. Everybody knows that. With Dave Phillips. And then the Blue Cats, as I perceive them to be, started with Fight Back album when Clint and Mitch Kors joined the band. Mitch is one of my favorite bass players, and I modeled myself in the early days very much on him and the way that he did things. So if you listen to a lot of the slap bass players of the early days, it's not consistent a lot, you know. So, and that's the way it was, because a lot of that was the way it was in the 50s. So you get one slap on, one slap off, as long as the bass is sort of rumbling along. Do you know what I mean? It's right. But Mitch was the first bass player, along with Anders James, and obviously Marshall. He was a cut above the rest, but you know, we've spoken about that already. But Anders James and Mitch Kors were the two bass players where every note, every slap was bang on the beat, like a metronome. And I wanted to play like that. I wanted every slap to be as if it was a machine doing it in a way. Mitch, the Fight Back era bass player from the Blue Cats, was like that. So I modeled myself very much on him to do that. So he was after Dave. The proper Blue Cats started with the Fight Back album. And I don't know if you're aware, but the Blue Cats turned into Beltane Fire in the early 80s. So the guys were a little bit despondent with the way that the whole scene was going then. And they decided to call it a day with the Blue Cats and locked themselves away in rehearsal rooms writing. And they became like a prog rock band with an upright bass called Beltane Fire. And they emerged with all this fantastic new material. It was basically the same band, just doing different material with a different name. And they got signed up to Sony CBS and released a fantastic album like that. And again, the double bass was in it, featured prominently in those recordings. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I heard those, and we still do Beltane Fire shows occasionally now. But when the Beltane thing, you know, like a lot of things in this industry, the major record deal, after doing loads of tours with people like Marillion and Blondie, Adam and the Ants and things like that, they got dropped. Very sad, because they had a lot more to give. And there's another album hidden away, which I've heard, which is fantastic. They went back together. They decided to go back together as the Blue Cats, but Mitch really, I think, had enough of the music industry at that time and retired. And he's remained retired. So then they got Paul Diffin into the band. Fantastic bass player. I don't know if he's watching now, but he played on the Tunnel record, which was another pivotal moment in neo-rockabilly history, in my opinion. What an album that was. And Paul Paul Stubbs, as we all called him, was playing on that record. He stayed with the band for quite a long time, and then he moved to Atlanta, and so it became very difficult. The band parted their ways. Clint went off and did a solo career, and they didn't get back together until goodness me, when was it? Blimey, can't remember. Early 2000s anyway. Did a couple of shows at the Hensby Rockabilly Festival in the UK, and it sparked up new interest. So that's when I got the call to join the band, because it wasn't commercially viable for them to keep flying Paul Diffin over from the States. So yeah, that was it. But definitely Mitch Cause was a big influence on me.
Mitch also played in Shaking Pyramids, right?
Yeah, he did that. So on the Celts and Cobras album, which is a great album, it was definitely a move away from the rocking industry, but it still retained some parts of it. There was a track on there called Reefabilly Polka. Yep. What a track that was. And he was invited to play on that record. Wow, what a bass sound that is. Fantastic. Yeah,
Shaking Pyramids had their own thing that I always appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. There was another track. Pretty Neat Come On was the other song that he played on, I think, on that album. I think there's only two. I might be wrong. Yeah, but they both sound fantastic, because he's just a brilliant player. We're still in touch with Mitch. We see Mitch occasionally.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. We met up in London recently. And,
is he still playing?
No, he really did retire. And he came. We did a Beltane Fire show at the 100 Club, the famous 100 Club in the Oxford Street in London. And I was really pleased, because Mitch came along to the show. And I said to him, I hope I played all your parts right. Which was cool.
That's so cool. And you mentioned Beltane Fire. I always thought it was an interesting band. And song that always stand out was Captain Blood. Oh, yeah. You guys playing that one?
Oh, yeah. We played that with the Blue Cats too, actually, because originally that was a Blue Cat song.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. They just used it. So it was on the demo that they sent to all the different record companies or whatever. And so that became part of the Beltane Fire recording when they first went into the studio to do it. Yeah, fantastic song. But I've got some video footage. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Some really grainy video footage of them playing in the early 80s in Holland as the Blue Cats.
I did.
Yeah. So that it is a couple of the songs transposed from Blue Cats to Beltane Fire. But I guess they would if you were proud of them and thought they hadn't received enough exposure, that you would then perhaps release it in a wider genre, you know?
I always liked Captain Blood, and especially, the song is great. Clint sings amazing as always. But there's also like a little roll slap that you cannot hear that often, during that.
I still do that one. That one stuck out to me when I heard it.
Oh, yeah.
Bounce off triple in the middle of the riff. Yeah, to me, that was a big part of the song, and I make sure I do that every time.
Exactly, you should. That's so cool.
I'll show you later how we do that if you want to.
Yeah, please. Yeah, of course. So let's get back to so after, for how long you were in the Sharks?
It didn't last that long. Yeah, the first time. So there's been some times revisited, but it didn't last that long. There's a lot of egos around at the time, like when you're young, there always is. And myself and Alan were both frontmen. So, there was a little bit of stuff going on there. I think sometimes when you've got that like aggressive edge going on in a band, it can produce good creative stuff. I think that happens a lot, which is why a lot of bands that get a lot of recognition don't last very long. Yeah, I think it was about 18 months altogether that we were doing that when we did all those recordings. But we were really busy in that time. And then we did a live radio show on the Dutch version of Radio 1 and KRO Radio. And everything came to a head on the ferry on the way home across the North Sea, and we decided to call it a day. So yeah, about 18 months I think that it was going on. But I'd already had things in my mind that I wanted to do with Frenzy. It wasn't called Frenzy at the start, but yeah, I had other plans to move on to another project where I felt just a little bit more comfortable.
And it's so amazing that, you know, just for 18 months that band like was so influential. And
it was great times, you know. I really enjoyed that period. It was,
I bet,
something in the air with the whole neo-rockabilly scene at the time. It was like a static electricity in the air with what was going on in London, and all that new neo sound that was coming out. You know, obviously it stemmed from some of our friends getting signed, major label stuff like the Polecats, Stray Cats, etc., Stargazers. And of course, when something happens at a major level like that, the whole subculture explodes, and that's what happened. And you could feel it in the air, you know. And we were lucky to be part of that with the Sharks. It was a wonderful time, and I'm so glad I was there then. It's so hard to explain to people that have come on in other generations. It's great that new generations are coming into the scene, but it's so hard to explain to people what that was like back then. It's a feeling I don't think I could ever repeat, but it was probably one of the best feelings, you know, creativity wise inside me I've ever had.
I can't even imagine, but you know, it seems like that. And for how long that excitement lasted, in general, not just, you know, for you?
What, you mean the original time that it was happening?
Yes.
Well, I mean, so the early stages of what was going on, I mean, I wasn't even part of those most early stages. So when the Blue Cats and the Polecats and the Rhythm Cats and all the Cats were doing the London circuit, the Stargazers and stuff like that, I was still very young, and I was still living in the sticks in Somerset on the opposite side of the country to London. But I could see it happening from afar. You had the Deltas, all those fantastic, really, really early bands. I wasn't part of that first thing. So there was all that original magic that even I missed out on. And then we sort of came in. I felt a little bit like we were second generation, even though we're talking, you know, just a few months between that happening and then our stuff starting to happen. But I felt like the newbie. Actually, I still do feel like the newbie a lot when I talk to those guys. But it went on for years. The whole nucleus of it was London. And then, you know, so you had like certain venues that were playing a lot, like the Headstone in Harrow. And then, of course, that morphed into the Clubfoot thing when the Neo-rockabilly name started to morph more into what they called Psychobilly with the Meteors and stuff like that. The Clubfoot became very popular and a massive mecca for everybody. There was, you know, between 800 and 1,000, 1,200 people there each Saturday night, and all the live recordings that came from that. And so you went from about 1980, some of it's before that. I mean, 78, the Blue Cats formed and the Polecats the same. So say 78 up to 88, 89. So it's the whole of the 80s really, and late part of the 70s. But then of course you've got the rock and roll revival bands like Matchbox and all Flying Saucers and all those kind of bands. Crazy Cavern, of course. That was all happening from the late 60s. So what do you say? Did it last 20 years? Did it last 10 years? Or did it not ever go away from the 50s? Could have been all of those things.
Absolutely. I mean, that music never gonna die. But you know, I was thinking more about that neo approach, neo-rockabilly approach, because that scene that had kind of some special kind of thing and unique. You know, it was like lots of young people like you and lots of exciting people.
Yeah. Oh, so
run
if
on to
you're talking
excitement.
about that initial neo-rockabilly thing, I think that was from about 78, 79 till maybe 83, 84. You know, then it sort of the psychobilly label was being put on the bands back then. I mean, everyone calls Frenzy a psychobilly band. I think we're neo-rockabilly because rockabilly is where I come from.
Yeah.
But people call us a psychobilly band because we grew more in the period when that name was being given to that type of music, really. But yeah, I think that initial electric period was from about 78 to maybe 83, 84. But there's still bands now that are just purely neo-rockabilly.
Sure.
And I prefer that label to the word psychobilly. I love everything about the whole scene. But if you wanted to pull me up on both of those names, I prefer neo-rockabilly personally.
That's the same when I was talking to Lemmy, and then lots of people ask, "Oh, Motorhead is a speed metal or this kind of metal or that." He's like, "No, we're the same as Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and Sex Pistols. We're just rock and roll."
Yeah, and he was right.
Absolutely.
As always, he was right.
Oh yeah. What about the Sharks? Were the Sharks considered themselves neo-rockabilly back then or psychobilly?
Neo-rockabilly, definitely.
And when did that psychobilly? When was the first time that you heard that term, like, for the genre?
It was definitely being bandied around even then. I think maybe towards the end of what we were doing, we may have considered ourselves a bit more psychobilly. I don't know. The word was being used, but the labeling that people were putting on us had changed. That's more the case than what we were calling ourselves. But I mean, I considered us a neo-rockabilly band. We were wearing all the colourful rockabilly clothes that had been exaggerated. I think the neo-rockabilly thing was rockabilly electrified and exaggerated, and that's what we were doing. But the Meteors were on high at that period with the In Heaven album and stuff, and that label started to start being used. So we just accepted it, So yeah, but we consider ourselves definitely at the start, at least, as neo-rockabillys.
And the Friends is still neo-rockabilly.
Well, I think so, but everyone else would probably disagree with me.
Yeah. Well, it's your band. That's more important.
We're just frenzy. To be honest, we're just frenzy. We've gone through so many musical twists and changes. We're just what we are. But if people want to call us psychobilly, that's fine. I still think I'm a neo-rockabilly.
I never cared for labels. If the music sounds good, it sounds good. If it doesn't sound good, it doesn't sound good.
Exactly.
Whatever label, it's it's.
But the music media are always going to want to put you in a pigeonhole, label you somehow.
Sure.
But I'll go along with anything. They can be. Frenzy shows attract a lot of different people, rock and hippies and God knows whatever. If they like Frenzy, they want to come along and see us. Same with any of the bands I play in. That's fine with me. They can call us whatever they want as long as it's not rude.
And since we talk a little bit about that early stages of the scene, when did Club Foot started?
Around 83, 84. I don't know the exact date. I think maybe it was 83. Of course, I wasn't. I was just breaking the London scene at the time.
Were you living in London at the time?
No, I've never lived in London. I've got to get my hat right. Hang on. There you go. No, I've never lived in London. It nearly happened once. I was excited to do that, but I'm glad I didn't. But we were going to London every weekend doing something. And we as Frenzy, because Frenzy formed in August 1983, and we were trying to break into London. It was difficult because we were a country bumpkin band. We started to play in London, I reckon around 84, late 84, maybe early 85. So a little bit behind what was already going on, like bands like Restless and whatnot, and Guana Bats were playing there a lot. And the main venue actually at that time was a place I mentioned a little earlier. It was called the Headstone in Harrow. I used to go up on the train to London all the time and watch bands in there. That's where I first met the Restless Boys and the Guana Bat Boys, etc. And that was the main hub. There was probably some more very rocking things like Dingwalls and whatever, but that's where I started to go. And there was definitely it was a focal point for that scene then. But then obviously bigger promoters with more money get involved, see something is bubbling and starting to emerge, and they want a piece of the cake. So a guy called John Curd, who was a famous London promoter at the time, he decided he wanted to have a piece of that cake, and he started the Clubfoot thing, which was in Hammersmith, on Hammersmith Broadway, in the Clarendon Ballroom.
You know, I remember all those records when I was a kid. You know, I mean, I was in Serbia back then, and I was, I don't know, 10, 9.
Oh, you youngster.
Well, I'm 43 now, so it's, you know, that was like a few years.
12 years behind me. 12 years behind me you are. But no, so the whole scene erupted there, and you had a place downstairs as well called the place was called the Broadway, and everyone used to call it downstairs at the Clarendon or downstairs at the Clubfoot. There was a real big thing happening there too. And the thing is, the guy that was putting the shows on there was the same guy that was putting on James Brown in Wembley Stadium. John Curd used to put on big shows. He was one of the main men at the Hammersmith Palais. So all those, and he was heavily involved with the Clash and all those shows that were going on at the Hammersmith Palais. Massive promoter in London, and he decided that he was going to start record labels to release some of our stuff, some of the rocking scene that was exploding. He wanted another piece of that, so he started ABC and ID Records, which we all released those records on, Live at the Clubfoot and all the Restless stuff, Guanabat stuff, Frenzy stuff, Demented Or Go, Stingrays, all of that. It was all him. So he took the whole thing to the next level. The Clubfoot, though, you realize, I don't know if you know, but the Clubfoot wasn't just psychobilly or neo-rockabilly then. It was everything. You know, punk bands were playing, reggae bands. Frenzy, when we were sort of trying to expand our horizons a little bit, played with the James Taylor Quartet there. And the Pixies played there. Lots of other genres were there, but of course everybody remembers it as the psychobilly mecca. But I remember, do you remember a band called the Butthole Surfers?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, they used to play there a lot as well. So it wasn't just psychobilly and rockabilly; it was all sorts of things. But he saw something there, and that's why all the records got released on all those labels.
That era, and that, you know, seems absolutely, you know, magical. I don't think it's ever gonna, you know, happen again like that on for the psychobilly genre.
I mean, to be honest with you, that the Clarendon Ballroom, I love the place deeply, but it was a shithole. You know, the carpets were sticky with beer and God knows what else was on those carpets, and the place was falling down. It was well past its prime. But at that point, most of the bands in the scene, including ourselves, it was a second home. It was a wonderful place to be at. In fact, when they eventually knocked the place down to remodel the whole area, we'd heard for a couple of years that was going to happen. The record label were telling us, and the agency were telling us that it was going to happen. They kept putting it off, and there was planning issues, etc., because it's headquarters of the UK Post Office now, amongst other things, and the Coca-Cola UK headquarters, etc. But then I had a phone call one day from one of the girls in the office, and she said, "It's happening. It's happening today. They're demolishing the place." So I jumped in my Jag and drove up to London, all the way up the M4, 120 miles there and 120 miles back, with an empty trunk, as you call it in the States, boot, as we call it here. And I pulled up outside the site, and I spoke to one of the builders, and there was a pile of bricks there that obviously was part of the Clarendon. And I said, "I used to play in this venue. Can I take some of those bricks home?" And the guy said, "Take as many as you want." So I filled the boot up so the car was down on its bump stops on the rear suspension. And I took all the bricks home and sold them to my friends and other band members and stuff. I've still got 2 or 3 of them at home in my attic. So yeah, that's how much it meant to me.
Well, I can see that. You know, a friend of mine gave me, like, the only brick story that I have is when a friend of mine gave me a brick of Willie Dixon's house from Chicago.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, and I thought, wow, this is cool.
You still got it? You still have it?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, something you need to keep, that is for sure.
It's a cool thing.
Yeah.
I would like to, hear you play something. Do you have something for us?
Yeah. What do you want me to do? I'll grab the bass. Let me just.
Whatever you want to do. I'll have requests later. I just want to hear you play and sing.
Right, so I'm gonna have to move the camera a little bit. Just bear with me, just 1 second. I'll turn the camera upwards. Okay, there we go. Close enough for jazz. So what do you want to hear me do?
I always want to hear some frenzy, but it's on you. Like whatever you feel like it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'll do first. I'll do some frenzy in a minute, but if you don't mind, I'll do something from one of my early heroes. Can I do an Elvis track? You don't mind if I do an Elvis song?
Sounds great.
A song that I heard first from Elvis. Some people might have seen me doing it. I might be repeating myself. Some people have seen me do this on my Facebook page recently, but it's only because I love it. So I'll do a little bit of it. Hopefully I won't make a mistake. Okay, here we go. Blue moon, blue moon, blue moon, keep shining bright. Blue moon, keep on shining bright. You're gonna bring me back around, baby, tonight. Blue moon, keep on shining bright. I say blue moon on Kentucky, just keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna let me blue. Blue moon on Kentucky, just keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna let me blue. Well, it was all one moonlight night, the stars shine bright. Wishing on high, love, say goodbye. Blue moon on Kentucky, just keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna let me blue. Rock it, baby. Well, it was on one moonlight night, the stars shining bright. Whisper on high, love, say goodbye. Blue moon on Kentucky, just to keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone and left me blue. Shortened version, there you go. Blue moon of Kentucky.
Awesome. All right, the audience, I want to hear some clapping, some thumbs up or something. Let's make us. This is our live show.
There was a couple of A-minors in there, but hopefully you didn't hear them anyway.
Sorry, what did you say?
There's a couple of mistakes in there, but hopefully nobody heard them.
I love the mistakes. I love music with mistakes. I don't, I never listen to music that it's polished and
it's real. Correct. It's got to be real, baby.
Yeah, you got to do it. All right. Betty's clapping. Sonia is asking Sonia is asking here. Hall of Mirrors. Carolyn D. Amazing how the style and words of a song can cross geographical lines.
So true.
Ari is clapping. Carolyn. So lots of people are clapping.
I think
you feel the noise?
Clapping.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Exactly.
Do you want to hear any more of the double bass, or?
Sure. Like what do you added? So let me read the so more people are clapping. More people are clapping. So I'm sure they want to see. So you got to hear the mistakes. So Marco just wrote, mistakes are rock and roll.
Of course. Listen to all those early 50s recordings. There's mistakes all over them.
And I'm sure the most important comment, it comes from Mia, and it says, well done, Dadio.
Oh, that's my daughter. Hi, Mia. How you doing? So I just want to tell you something, that some of the recordings I did recently for Facebook and whatever were recorded on my daughter Mia's phone. So she was the one that was behind the camera. My wife was the other one, but Mia did it too. So yeah, thanks, Mia. Hope you're all listening at home.
See, they do. Thank you, Mia. And you should film your dad more often, and so make him post all these bass videos more often.
Yeah, she's trying to get into filming, so I think she's got the right leads into the film industry for sure.
Awesome. So there were like a few requests for
I'll do some requests.
I see red, you know. Let's see what else, you know, another I see red from Adrian.
Should we do a bit of I see red then?
How do you feel like it? There's like also hardcore requested misdemeanor. So whatever you feel like it. It's your time to shine.
Yeah. In the emotional battlefield, he's fighting wars in his head. 10 long years inside that swans, yeah, thinking he's gonna be dead. He can still hear the gunfire and screaming cries of death. I see red. I see red. I see red. Yeah. Nixon strings and crazy schemes, he had to join and go. Left his home in New York State to run the battle zone. In a blaze of blood and guts, glory is out of this breach. I see red. Whoa, I see red. I see red. Digging trenches in the ground, how can a man survive? Uniform in another man's blood, not one of his friends alive. Falls to his knees and he prays to the sky, asks the question why. I see red. 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 And I see red. I see red. And I see red. I see red. I see red. I see red. There you go. No guitar version of I See Red.
We don't need any guitars when you play like that.
Well,
you can leave your bass. I have like quite a few more questions.
okay.
I don't want you to stand with the bass. You don't have to. You know, the comments are amazing. You know, Sonia gave us.
Just bear with me a minute, guys.
Go ahead.
My tech guy that was here earlier has gone off for a Chinese, so I'm doing it all on my own.
Okay. This Alex wrote fucking amazing. You know, lots of all of these.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, Adrian Prost. Hello, mate. He's just moved from France to the UK, actually. So I wish him luck with that.
You know, you have a comment from Mia as well. He said he better start paying.
Paying what? For the video? That's part of the privileges of me being your dad. I just bought you a car. What more do you want, woman?
Another car.
Yeah, a more expensive car.
Diego wrote, always loved his singing almost as much as he's playing.
Oh, thank you, man.
And I can agree with that. You have like one thing that I noticed about your singing and your playing is that you're singing and playing in a higher register than most of singers and bass players. Would you consider that to be your style?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just I'm self-taught completely. There's a few little things I mentioned earlier that Sam Sardi from the Ricochets and the Guanabats showed me some of the slap techniques, because where I lived out in the sticks, there was nobody doing anything like that. So I was just learning from records and whatnot. But so I learned in my own way, and I just did what I thought sounded right. And I guess that singing in that register is comfortable for me. It's a killer when you're on tour, but I just feel comfortable in the higher register. I have to say though that I can't sing as high as I used to when I was younger. So some of the things have been transposed a little bit here and there, just so I can hit the notes, so to speak. But bass playing wise, I do tend to play in the higher register, right at the top of the neck, So starting on what would technically be the octave and working upwards from there. I guess that's an early frenzy style, shark style trait. But I'm more up and down the neck than I used to be. But in the early days, for sure, I think playing up the neck was part of my my style. Yeah, definitely.
I noticed that, like, for both sharks and frenzy. So you started developing that style already with the sharks.
Yeah, definitely. I was always, a lot of the stuff was in A or G, the keys of A or G or E, like most people play. But I did them all up right at the top of the neck as opposed to playing down. I didn't want to play the open strings. I was told at an early age from a local musician that we all used to admire that open strings suck. So I tried to learn all my riffs around always closed strings, so you didn't get any rings or feedback and stuff like that. And I guess that's still stuck to this day, really. I have to say, being in the Blue Cats, they like me to play in a lower register quite a lot. So that has disciplined me down to the lower end of the neck quite a bit. But the difference is now, of course, I use magnetic pickups. A lot of that feedback from open strings was coming from the early contact pickups that we all used to use. With the magnetics, it's much more accurate, and I don't get the feedback as much. So I don't mind. I'll play all over the bass now.
Absolutely. You know, I think that thing with not using open strings is more that comes from the classical music world. And then I know when I was playing in a symphony orchestra and when I was studying classical music, they always insisted that you don't use open strings.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons is because you cannot use vibrato. So
No,
you can't shake your hand on the open string.
Yeah.
So then you basically have to, press the note and learn what all these notes are, and then you can use a vibrato and then make it nicer.
Yeah, play the same note somewhere else.
Exactly.
On the neck. Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Phil Edwards, and thanks for the super chat. And I think we got like another super chat here.
Cheers, mate.
From Betty. No, this is a super sticker. Okay, so guys, this is my first time that YouTube allowed me to use super stickers and super chats, so I'm kind of excited about this feature. So it's right under the live chat if you feel like supporting the show.
Well done, Betty.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Phil. From Jürgen, it was great watching you guys playing I See Red again last year. And he also wrote, by the way, got your lyrics sheet here.
Ah, so it's you that pinched it from the stage. There's always somebody that pinches your set list or your lyric sheet from the stage, which means you've got to write new ones out the next day.
I know, like once I played in, actually twice with Tiger Army, that happened to me. Once it was in Mexico, and somebody took all my cheat sheets, like they were like 30 or something. And somebody jumped on stage, and I was like, oh my God, I really don't want to write down any of these again.
It's a nightmare. They don't realize these things when they're stealing from you.
Yeah, but it's like, all right, rather steal a jacket or something. Just don't steal these. I don't want to spend another couple hours writing these.
Just don't steal my Jack Daniels, okay?
Let me see. So we got like wash hands. I guess that means that people are crazy.
When people type that in, it comes up. But I have washed my hands, honestly.
Nikki wrote, Steve's voice is unique. Love the high vocals and little screams. Totally different and great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Dirk asked, like, could you show a little about your slap technique? Well, actually, next section we're gonna be talking a lot about Steve's slap bass technique. So just bear with us.
Yeah, we'll do it soon.
Lots of people, Steve is a man with a mission. Right on. Thank you. Carolyn, these hearts.
Oh,
and thank you so much. And great comments.
Thank you.
Great interview, Steve. This is just listening to someone telling me about what was happening behind the scenes to the music of my youth.
I think that's what's good about this chance to do this is a lot of people want to know what happened back then behind the scenes, because obviously everyone's got the records, seen the videos that have been released, and they see all the YouTube stuff, old stuff, new stuff. But a lot of people are really keen to find out what happens, behind the scenes, and how we got to where we are, because a lot of it was just luck. Definitely a lot of it was luck. But anyway, they like to see it. That's why Steve, Frenzy's guitarist, was doing video diaries of all of our shows and tours that we were doing quite a lot. I don't know if you've seen any of them. There's loads of them on YouTube if you look.
I'll check them out.
Yeah, and all backstage stuff, all the farting and drinking shenanigans and messing around and getting ourselves in the zone before we play, writing set lists in the van, farting and drinking. There's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah.
And they were really popular. We haven't done them for a while, obviously, because we haven't played for a while. But people enjoy that because they want to see what's going on when you're not on stage.
Yeah, it's. I feel that nowadays people want to learn what's the real life, what's the real thing that's happening, not just like to have like some rock stars, untouchable rock stars on the stage. Yeah,
for sure. And that's nobody should be in that untouchable category, I think. So we always go out to the merch store when we're playing shows and meet everybody, because that's important to us. I like to go out into the venue when we're playing and before the show and after the show and meet people, so that people can see that you're not untouchable. You're just a normal guy and appreciates everybody being into what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that, that's why I'm doing this, so that people can actually, we as bass players don't get like lots of chances like to present our career, So I just decided like, I'll just create something and then, just invite all these cool people and,
I'm glad you did
this show.
For sure. Yeah, we're definitely underexposed when it comes to
absolutely. I mean, especially people like from, not just psychobilly, but rockabilly or any kind of slap bass player, like even guys that play jazz or bluegrass, they don't hardly get any exposure. I mean, just like really a few people. It's interesting, and it's a technique that it's so powerful and so interesting and could be used in any genre. Yeah. It's kind of like a crazy to think about it.
For sure.
Let me see. So Alex wrote, Steve is still one of my favorite players, and especially Shark stuff. I truly want to hear Take a Razor to Your Head.
Oh, goodness me. I can bet how that one goes. Alan used to sing that one anyway. Alan used to sing that one. I can't really remember the lyrics, to be honest with you.
And quite a few requests for Misdemeanor. And let me see if there's anything else that I should feature for now. Carol, thanks for this. It made our night here in already freezing Germany. Our best to you guys, Carolina and Martin.
All the best to you and all.
Woody wrote, lots of farting and drinking going on back then.
Yes,
I wanted to ask you about not about farting, but I wanted to ask you about those videos. And which channel is that? Like, how should I would like to point out my viewers to your viewers.
Okay, so I'm going to admit to you straight away that I'm not very tech. I'm old school. I like things I can work with my hands. Steve Guitar, Franz's guitarist, Steve Eaton, he does a lot of our tech stuff. So when he first started putting up the videos, I think the YouTube handle was Steve Farq, which is one of his other bands. But there's definitely a Frenzy channel now. It's Frenzy stuff, I'm sure, on YouTube. So yeah, just look around. But all you need to do is go onto YouTube and put in Frenzy Psychobilly. Thousands of videos come up.
Okay, so you heard what you should do. Something that I wonder, like, do you have like a favorite Frenzy lineup?
Well, the thing is, that's weird, isn't it? Because your favorite Frenzy lineup is always going to be the lineup that you have at the time. I don't know. It's difficult. A lot of the previous lineups didn't last very long because things were changing so fast back in those days. So, for instance, I formed Frenzy with Simon Brand, who everybody probably knows that, did all the Robot Riot stuff and all the very early recordings, and then went on to do his own thing with Torment. Really good friend of mine, but we just couldn't work together very much as I loved him. But that lineup with Simon Brand, I mean, I found Simon in a record store, not a record store, sorry, a musical instrument store in Bristol. And he was playing with a rock and roll band in Bristol called the Firebirds. I went to Bristol to find another double bass, to buy a bass. I can't remember the name of the shop that we were in Broadmead, which doesn't exist anymore, shopping centre in Bristol. And we wanted to do something together. I became friends with him. I went to see his band, the Firebirds, a few times, and he was aware of the Sharks because obviously we'd made a record and released it. And I said, look, I want to do something different. I want to do something else, something that's my own. And he said, I'm a guitarist. So we basically formed the band there and then. And we were originally called Hellfire. Actually, we weren't called Frenzy. We were called Hellfire. But that lineup only lasted, I think maybe August, maybe 6 or 7 months. That's all it lasted. And then we got Kev Saunders into the band. But that lineup only lasted from around February, March 84 till the end of 87, when we ended up in court with ID Records, and we had to take a bit of a sabbatical because we couldn't play while a legal case was being settled. And then Kev never came back, so that was a short-lived lineup as well. Then when we got back together, Mark Harmon from Restless played for us for a few months, and we did a few tours with Mark, but it was definitely just a Depping gig. He just stood in whilst we found somebody else. Then we found Carl Parry to play guitar, and he lasted 16 years with us, I think, something like that. And that was a great lineup. I love them all. That's the thing. I got really nice memories of the lineup with Carl and Adam on drums. And then Steve Eaton joined us Christmas 1999. So he's been with me nearly, it was 20 years, isn't it? He's been with me 20 years. And I think that the Frenzy lineup as it is the best one, because we made my favorite records like that. I know the Clockwork Toy is, everybody loves that album. I do as well. It was a very special period. I never repeat that period, but I think we've done better songs since then, and we play much better live than we used to back then. And Steve Eaton is a big part of that. Obviously, Adam on the drums as well. I've known Adam since he was 6 or 8 years old, and we've been in bands together a long time. I think this lineup that we have right now is the best.
Do you have a favorite Frenzy record?
Well, there's a lot. I think obviously Icy Red has to be there, up there with them all. I love Robot Riot as well. Although after you've played those songs for 37 years, which we are, how old we are now, you can get a little bit, not bored, that's not the right word, but you get a bit complacent with those tracks. And they get a bit sort of almost like throwaway, if that makes sense. My favorite song that I ever recorded was on the 909 album, and it's called Empire of the Light. It's not one of people's favorite Frenzy albums, but that is the whole process that I went through to write that song. And I think I wrote that one on my own as well. And from how it started to how it ended up was a really fantastic process. And I think that's my favorite Frenzy song. It's got to be up there with Hero. So I think that my favorite song that we play live and we recorded since maybe Icy Red is on the In the Blood album. It's called Hero, which is very personal to me because it's about growing up and being bullied at school, being beaten up at school, and then people helping me and stepping in to stop people punching me and stuff like that. And then you switch from having heroes in the scene, so people that saved you, then heroes in the scene, and then when you have kids, they look upon you as their hero, and that's what that song's all about. So because of the personal part of that is, I think that's another of my favorites for sure.
Drew Rowan wrote, I played more of In the Blood record on my radio show more than Clockwork Toy.
Oh, cool, man. Thank you very much. I do like it when people champion the newer stuff, because Frenzy can be a little bit of a Marmite band. Sometimes we like to push the boundaries a bit when we're writing, because you just can't keep writing the same kind of stuff over and over again. If you're a musician, you want to move on to the next thing and challenge yourself and improve all the time. But if you're playing within a genre that can sometimes be a little bit blinkered, and you do something that they don't like, then you're not flavor of the month anymore. So I really like it when people play stuff from the new records a little bit more. I have to say that In the Blood as an album is definitely my favorite Frenzy album after Clockwork Toy. Possibly my favorite Frenzy album ever, to be honest.
Is that a song is that an album with Wild Night?
No, that's originally on the This Is the Fire album.
Ah, This Is the Fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
So In the Blood was the last Frenzy album from a few years ago.
That makes
yeah. This Is the Fire was from 89. I think we recorded it in 1989. It was released in 1990.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Since you're talking about heroes, Mia wrote Hero.
Yeah, well, there's at least 2 lines in that song about my daughter Mia.
All right.
So there would be lines about my youngest daughter Emily in it, but I wrote that song before she was born.
Okay. Was she aware about it, Mia?
Yeah, she knew. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
If she comes to watch us play, she always gets embarrassed because she knows that the song's got a lot to do with her in it. So she's always oh, Dad, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, see if you can spot the lines about my daughter in it anyway. Yeah,
okay. It's interesting about that thing, how kids react, like, and I'm not sure, how some of them, like your daughter, have like such an influential dad and such a cool dad that did like all these cool things back in the day, and still doing. It's like this is much cooler than 99% of dads like that other kids have.
They say that a lot. They say that at school, and they do say that a lot. They say that my dad's a rock star. Well, I'm not sure about that. I might be a big fish in a very small pond, but I'm definitely not a rock star. But they like to tell their friends so much. Well,
definitely a psychobilly star.
I don't know.
Or a slap-based star,
I'm just me. It's just me.
You're just Frenzy.
Yeah, just me, little old me.
Is what I wanted to ask you, like, so is usually when people talk about Frenzy, do you feel that they favorite any particular lineup, or they just appreciate the songs?
Yeah, we do get that, So I was saying earlier about sometimes they consider us a Marmite band. You always get the real Neo-rockabilly people that say the Simon Brand lineup was the best with Robot Riot and all those early songs. And then there's people that say that the Kev Saunders line, when Kev was in the band, that was the best lineup. You're always gonna get that. The thing that gets to me the most that I don't like is when they complain about the guitar sound. So most of the time, Frenzy's had a pretty dirty sound. Simon's was pretty clean, but from the moment that Kev was in the band, which was March 1984, it was a dirtier sound. Even Icy Red is a dirty, crunchy sound. And they always complain about Frenzy having a distorted guitar sound. Well, we've always, apart from the first couple of years, well, not even that, the first few months, had a dirty guitar sound. And those people that complain about that are the same people that listen to bands like Demented or Go, etc., who've got a distorted guitar sound. I don't understand the logic in that. But anyway, we are what we are. Frenzy are the sound that we are, and you either love us or you hate us. I don't mind either way.
You know, my favorite thing about bands is like when I hear that bands actually like change their sound. I mean, not like to playing like, you know, punk and, you know, next day, I don't know, like rave music or something. But it's like when they try to develop their own style and they want to try to change it, that's always seemed for me that the band members actually cared about music. They just didn't want to like play, you know, Blue Sweat Shoes over and over.
Well, that's the thing. Right from the very start of Frenzy's days, and even in the Sharks days, I didn't want to do the same old cover versions that all the other rockabilly bands were doing, because it had been done 1,000 times. I mean, there's still bands that do that now, and I just don't get it. I wanted to write songs that weren't 12 bars, that had a more intelligent chord structure and different lyrics that weren't about pink Cadillacs and black slacks or whatever. I mean, all fantastic, but all been done to death. And I always wanted, even from the earliest songs I was writing, I was 15, 16 years old, we wanted to write about something else and not play a 12 bar. That was always important to us. And sometimes that can alienate you. And we've had a lot of that with Frenzy. But we take a lot of pride in the fact that a lot of other musicians that have come along after us have used us as an influence and done the same thing. You know, bands like Long Tall Texans, Batmobile, whatever, they've all done stuff that isn't 12 bar. And I think that's fantastic, you know, that you need to do something outside of the box. But you can take a lot of shit for that, to be honest. And we have had that with Frenzy. But then when you see some people that you consider equal peers or whatever you want to call it, you know, listing you as an influence, then, you know, you've been doing the right thing. And eventually people do come around to it. So there you go. We are what we are. You
know, life is too short just to like be a copy of someone or like a copy of a copy of a copy of someone. So
yeah, I mean,
we all have to do our own thing.
Listen to the chord structure in Icy Red and Clockwork Toy, the songs themselves. Now, these were early Frenzy recordings. We recorded those songs, some of them in late '84. We re-recorded some of the stuff in London after we'd recorded the demos in Bristol, but they were recorded, some of them in '84. Clockwork Toy and Icy Red were originally recorded long before we did the Pete Gage recordings. And listen to the chord structures. There's hundreds of chords in there, but it doesn't sound complicated. But you've got an intelligent chord structure within your song. And that is, to me, very important. Sometimes Steve, my guitarist, says that I'm overdoing it, but I'm scared just to write a 12 bar now because I feel like I've underachieved. And I think if you write a better chord structure within a song, you get a better melody for the vocals over the top. And for me, that's everything. Because I listen to so many different types of music. I'm not just a rockabilly fan, a psychobilly fan, or whatever. You know, some of my favorite musicians are so far out of that genre, it's unbelievable. Like Gary Newman, I love Level 42. I'm a major Bing Crosby fan, and there was a different chord for every bar when they were doing their jazz-based stuff in the early days, and that's important to me. That really is important to me. There are some stuff that's Frenzy 12 bars, but I prefer to do stuff that's a little bit more advanced, let's say, for want of better words.
For me, it was always kind of like I like different chord structures as long as they don't sound pretentious. You know, as long as you have that, you still are keeping the groove, you're still keeping the beat and everything, and then melody is nice and it fits. The chords help out the melody, not taking out of the melody. That was kind of major thing for me, and I think that Frenzy are doing that, so that's great, and I think that's what created Frenzy sound as well.
I think so too, and those chord structures create the melody, and the melody equals a hook, and a hook in a song is the part of the song that everybody remembers. So how many different hooks can you do over the same 12 bar? It's been done. So you want to do a nice chord pattern to enhance a cool melody on your song, and that's, to me, that's everything.
So when you write songs, you start writing the chords first?
It's different every time, to be honest. Well, kind of. So, funnily enough, I come up with most of my chorus ideas. That's what we tend to pivot the song around for Frenzy, is a chorus, a big chorus hook. And funnily enough, I tend to write most of those ideas when I'm sat in the bath. That sounds a bit weird, but that's the time that I think I can empty my mind the most, and come up with some melody ideas for a chorus. The chorus tends to give me a vocal lick that I can work with, and then the vocal lick transposes into a subject for the song. So then I get the ideas and bits and pieces. And then what we've done most of the time over the years is we go in the studio with everything structured. We write the chords afterwards. Myself and Steve from Frenzy, the guitarist, we get together and we write all the chord structures at my house in an evening and put that together. And then we would go into the studio, we'd rehearse it a little bit, and then go into the studio and build the whole thing up. Put the choruses down, overlay the vocals on the choruses with the harmonies and bits and pieces, almost completely finish the song, except for the verse lyrics. And then what I would do is take the rough mix home with me, and the excitement of the fact that the song was almost there on tape would inspire me to finish the lyrics. And then I'd write the lyrics and we'd go back into the studio a week or two later and then record all the verses and finish the song to a total mix. And that's how we tend to do it at Frenzy until recently, at least, right back from the early 80s, really. Hey, Djordje, I can't hear you currently. You've got.
I muted myself.
You're back.
We have a question. Who designs your album covers?
Me, mostly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So most of the time when we're recorded all the tracks, there's a few standout songs, so we always do a joint decision as to what the album should be called once everything's finished. And then I tend to come up with an idea for a sleeve design, and put my designs to graphic houses or whatever, and wait for them to come up with a finished article. And 909 album, for instance, from 96, I actually drew that World War II bomber nose art and actually pasted together the whole sleeve in my bedroom at home myself. Before the days of cut and paste with computers, it was all done physically. And then I gave it to the graphic house to make it all look less scrapbook style. But yeah, everything, chose all the photos. And I tend to do all the paste ups, as we used to call it back in the old days, myself. And then the graphic house does the final putting together, ready to go off camera ready artwork.
You know, Frenzy also had unique designs. I always like that. You guys always were different than, standard neo-rockabilly or psychobilly. Other bands.
We wanted it to be different. We wanted a different, visual impact on every album that we released. Again, we took a lot of shit for that for once. But I wanted to do it and put it out there, and we've become well known for it. And things have turned around now, and people prefer that, I think. I mean, even now, some of the stuff is too samey. People need to, do different things, and always should be doing within the genre. Just do different things and make it interesting.
Phil Edwards wrote, from all us, said, I like the sound of that. Cheers for the music, amigo.
So Phil runs a Facebook page called I Like the Sound of That. He comes from this genre, but if you go to the Facebook page, I Like the Sound of That, there's many different types of music up there that a lot of different people put up for listening to, and then generates a lot of interesting chat.
Good to know.
Yeah, definitely. So go and
Thanks
visit
for
the page.
pointing it out. All right, so guys, go to Facebook and check out I Like the Sound of That.
Yeah, for sure.
Nikki Lugoshi wrote, I got It's a Mad, Mad World on my mind for days every time I simply listen to it.
Yeah, see, we took a lot of flack for the Mad, Mad World album. It's a different album cover. It's the album cover comes from the graffiti artist world. It was done by a famous graffiti artist called Boz Boswell, and I wanted to do something completely different, and I could see the world was going crazy even back then, so that's why I wrote the song. And then that song immediately stood out as an album title, and I asked Boz to do the album cover in a graffiti kind of style. So we changed the Frenzy logo a little bit for the front cover, and as I said, I took a lot of flack for that, but anyway, I love it, so I don't care.
That's the only thing that it's important.
Yeah, and the recording wise was really interesting. That was in the Carl Parry period, and I was also involved with a guy called Sean Kirkpatrick, who was guitarist in a rock band called Bronze, who were on the same label as Motorhead at the time, and those guys knew Lemmy really well too. He opened a recording studio locally, and we became very friendly, and that's where we recorded the This Is the Fire album. When we started to write the Mad World album, we wanted to get a more quality sound. And Sean knew Dave Charles, who was Dave Edmunds' drummer. Dave Edmunds at the time owned Rockfield Studios in Monmouth in South Wales, very famous. Major bands have recorded there for many decades. And even when we were there, actually, Hawkwind were in recording as well.
Wow.
Yeah, Tapao and other bands I can't remember the names of. But Wet 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 had just finished recording an album there as well, and Big Country. So it's a very famous studio, and we pulled some strings and managed to get into one of the studios on downtime, and we recorded a good portion of Mad World in there, and we co-produced it with Sean Kirkpatrick and Dave Charles, Dave Edmunds' drummer. And in fact, we didn't have a lot of that stuff. We were between drummers, so we used a machine. I don't know if many people know that, but we called the machine Matt Darius, as if it was a person. And a lot of that machine work was played by me, because I play drums too, and a lot of it was also played by Dave Charles, Dave Edmunds' drummer, and a lot of the live cymbal work was done by Dave Charles. So that was a good time, and we definitely upped our game by recording at Rockfield. I think you can hear it in the quality of the recordings. Unfortunately, the budget ran out, and we had to finish the album in a studio that wasn't good. And that's about the only thing I don't like about that album, because there's quite a lot of quality drop between the songs that were done in different studios. I wish we could have afforded to do the whole thing at Rockfield, but man, that place was expensive.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Nikki also pointed out to Sally's Pink Bedroom. Great album and totally different kind of sounds and even artwork. It tells how they totally are not afraid of trying styles and stick to music genres.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Do you want to hear the story behind the very controversial Sally's Pink Bedroom album? Do you want to hear that?
Sure.
So as I mentioned earlier on, we ended up in a court case, a legal battle with ID Records about non-payment of royalties. All the Clockwork Toy album and the Icy Red single had topped the independent charts and was obviously generating a lot of cash. So we weren't getting paid that. And it was a lot of money, hell of a lot of money. It still is, even in today's rates. We kind of won the court case, but we had to have a get-out clause because it was a 5-album deal. We'd only recorded 1 album with them. And the only way we could get out of the contract was to record 1 more album. We didn't want to record that album with them, but we were forced to do it, and then we could leave with all the previous material, master tapes, glass masters, photography to do with as we pleased. So we decided that we would spend as much of the record company's money as possible, and make an album that nobody particularly would recognize as Frenzy. We were going to call ourselves a different name to make that record. We were going to be called Blue Ice, and that was our way out of it, and we thought that was a good get-out plan. So we did spend a lot of the record company's money. We went into Greenhouse Studios in Holloway Road in London and spent an absolute fortune. And it was produced by Pat Collier, who had produced Katrina and the Waves and The Wonder Stuff and Curiosity Killed the Cat and lots of other major label stuff. And one of Katrina and the Waves session players played a lot of keyboards and saxophones and stuff on that record. And we thought that it would never get released because they wouldn't like it, and we would then not have to have the burden of releasing the record, and we could just leave the label. Unfortunately, they changed their mind and they decided they wanted to release it as Frenzy. We had no control over it. We did the photo shoot and everything as Blue Ice. And then, to our horror, the album came out with Frenzy logos all over it, and we were not happy. But it just proved that we could do lots of other genres. That's one of the reasons we did it too, was to prove that we could do other things, that I could switch to bass guitar and do that. We actually did some shows as Blue Ice with bass guitar, and yeah, it was to raise our game personally. Do lots of other stuff and pay homage to a lot of the people that had influenced over the years. But yeah, it came out as a Frenzy record, and I've been trying to deal with that for years. But a lot of people with a decent ear still like it, and we are considering re-release. I own the rights to that record now, and I have done since the court case, and we will probably re-release it next year as a CD.
That's cool. Do people still request songs from that album?
Well, we did. There was a couple of songs that we did as Frenzy in that studio using some of the record company's money that we were going to do as our next album. But the record company came to the studios and picked up the tapes, including those. So House on Fire and one of the other, I can't remember, there was a couple of tracks that were supposed to be for the next proper Frenzy album that ended up on that record. So yeah, but so I like House on Fire because it's a full up-tempo Frenzy style record that we wrote in a hotel room in Holland in 1986, and we'd already demoed it in a studio in Holland, and it was always supposed to be a Frenzy track, but there was lots of mistakes being made between us and the record company at the time, and it just ended up on Sally's Green Bedroom. That's my favorite track on it. But I like a lot of the tracks on it. I like The Hunt. I think The Hunt is a fabulous track, and we decided actually to put that in the Frenzy set for many, many years, and it was always pretty popular. I'm trying to think of the rest of the tracks that are on that album, but there was maybe 2 or 3 that we used to play in the Frenzy set. Yeah, I mean, I like the whole album. I was very, very proud of it, but it should never really have been released as a Frenzy record.
You have a question regarding that. How important is it to own your own masters?
Well, I think it's really important these days. It's a lot easier to release music than it used to be. And if you've got the right equipment, it's a lot easier to record it in a home studio. But how popular a record becomes is all about promotion. Promotion is money. And if you've got the money, you can promote it better. Record companies always used to have more money than the bands, and that's why you went down that route. Social media can help a lot, but even now, having a plugger, as they're called, from a record label push you, there's no substitute for that. And you can't do the promotion yourself in the same way that they could. But unfortunately, the downfall of that is you have to give up the rights. There's different routes that you can take in between as a happy medium, but generally, if you want to get pushed, you need a label behind you. Labels don't exist with that kind of level of money, especially at the moment. So it's not easy. But the worst thing is that you give up your rights to your music when you do that, unless you pull off some really fancy license deal, but they tend to not last very long. So if you self-release, which is what we want to do really, you actually make more money, which is important if you want to carry on producing music. People don't seem to get that. It's not just a hobby. And if you own your own music, you can do all sorts of different things with it. And you get more money back to yourself. Unfortunately, you tend not to be able to reach a bigger audience. So it's a bit of a playoff. But personally, from now on, I want to own all my own music, because anything that we want to re-release that we don't own is always raises huge difficulties for us. We've wanted to re-release a lot of our own stuff for older stuff for a long time, because it's only available in cyberspace in those horrible formats that can be bootlegged to hell. I want to re-release vinyl and still CDs, even though they don't sell very well, and do some singles and some special editions and box sets. But I can't do it because I have to pay record companies to license my own material. So therefore, I think it's really important for musicians to own their own masters and their own rights.
I think that's a route to go, and then lots of people are choosing that, especially in our genres.
Definitely.
Another question.
Any independent music, any independent band, it's important to do that these days, I think.
Another question from Carlos. Do you prefer mono recording or digital?
I don't particularly like digital. I prefer to do stuff analog, but it's so hard to find studios that are doing that now. They are creeping back, like vinyl is creeping back into music and becoming pretty big. For instance, vinyl's outselling CDs, which is great. But it's digital. I don't like the digital kind of thing. Analog studios are expensive because the equipment is expensive to maintain. There isn't the infrastructure. We were talking about this the other day, Djordje. If you want to record on 2-inch analog, that equipment is so expensive to maintain and obtain in the first place. The studios that do that kind of thing tend to be pretty expensive. It's cheaper to do everything digital, but I don't particularly like that. Maybe it's because I don't understand all that digital side of recording. Mono recordings obviously are a thing way from the past. Early mono recordings are probably unbeatable. Early stereo recordings are disgusting, like when all the vocals and all the guitars are on the left side and the drums and the bass are on the right side. Awful.
That's pretty much unusable these days when everybody's listening to music on their phones or little assistants. Yeah,
when stereo became good and you could do all the wonderful effects with panning left to right and make magical things happen in your headphones. I love all that, but then that was still analog recording. I've always hated digital recording, but what can I do about it? It's the future, and it can, if you understand it, which I don't particularly, make life easier. But one of my missions is so we can keep releasing records, because we haven't released a record for 10 years as Frenzy, and thankfully the Blue Cats have been doing so. I've been keeping out there recording wise, but we haven't released a Frenzy record for 10 years, and a lot of that is because myself and Steve don't understand the digital process to be doing stuff at home. We do more now, and we're definitely going to be, with the help of the people that own these studios, by the way, we're going to be learning more about that so we can become more independent and self-sufficient. So yeah, unfortunately, digital is the only way forward, and that's the way to go. But we're always going to be releasing vinyl. I think vinyl is more important now than it has been since the 80s, and I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff on vinyl. There's a lot of stuff that I've got tapes as well of our early demos and alternative versions of things I'm going to be re-releasing on limited edition vinyls when I get around to it.
I would love to hear you play a little bit more. Do you mind grabbing the bass?
Sure, no problem. What I am going to do, just quickly before I do that, Djordje, is just pour myself another quick Jackie. Sorry.
Someone wrote something about Jackie. Let me see if I can find it. Lots. I really appreciate the comments, please, guys. So keep them coming. Somebody promised you. Oh yeah. Johnny Gomez he wrote, "Hey Steve, I have a bottle of Jack when you come out to California."
Yes, what a wonderful
So now it's public. Now it's public, so you can screenshot it, and when you come here,
he will. Every time I go out to California, Johnny and the team really look after us, and musically and with Jackie D, it would seem.
Awesome. So what do you want to play?
I don't know. What do you want to do? You want to talk about technique? Do you want to talk about techniques now, Djordje?
I always want to hear you play. Let me hear you play a little bit. So people ask for misdemeanor a lot. I always want to hear bass solos. So whatever you feel like it, combine, sing, not sing, whatever you want to do.
I don't know. Bit of misdemeanor maybe. I haven't rehearsed any of this, and I'm so rusty because I haven't played a live show since March. I can't even believe that. It's the longest I haven't played a gig in 40 years. But anyway. Let me tell you about my life. I wasn't meant to be here. No, that's not going right now. That definitely needs drums and guitar. Let me think of something else. Let's talk about technique for a minute, and then I'll think about something else. You still there, Djordje?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I was getting ready for the technique thing.
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry. Yeah, I need a. Can't pitch that one properly right here. Out there in the galaxy where humanoids have slaves, they use their androids and their servants till they reach the scrappy. Now the time has come for the robots to attack. Immobilize, pulverize, with some freedom back. This is a robot riot, clashing metal and clarinets. Robot riot, we're in jam of sound effects. Robot riot, fine arms and legs no less. Robot riot, hate their androids, don't make a mess. The star shake, the planets quake, and moons begin to explode. Watch yes and no's her program boards hit the self-struck mode. Nuts and bolts and laser beams are closely around to make the damage irreparable. Still the definite sound, this is a robot riot, clashing metal and clarinets. Robot riot, we're in general sound effects. Robot riot, fine arms and legs no less. Robot riot, hate their androids, don't make a mess. There you go. Weird playing without a guitar.
Awesome. All right, guys, it's time to clap. Time to clap.
Sorry about the misdemeanor thing.
Make the noise.
I definitely need a guitar to pitch to in misdemeanor.
I wanna actually mention something about it, because I'm not sure how much our viewers are. Some of these are bass players, of course, so they probably do appreciate that. But it's kind of like hard, to play and sing, play bass and sing, without drums and guitar, and it makes us kind of vulnerable a little bit more than usual. So I really appreciate all of you guys.
I definitely felt vulnerable then in misdemeanor, but I'd never even tried that before without a guitar. So, and it's something that it needs a bit more going on behind it for that song to work. So Robot Riot was easier.
You know what? You got lots of, hand clapping.
Yeah.
See? Carlos, Betty, Jürgen.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much indeed.
All of these guys. So, I wanted to ask you, I always loved, and quite a few people mentioned that, Phantom Rockers album. And it would be great. Can you show me that riff that you're playing in that song? So now is the time for all of you to grab your basses. So all you bass players, grab your basses, and you're getting a lesson from Steve. I hope you appreciate that. So it's a unique opportunity.
So I'll sing a little bit of the verse, and then we go into the part where the guitar matches the bass. We did it. We wrote the songs for those. It's really weird because a lot of people weren't doing that kind of thing, but we actually matched all the high notes on the guitar with what was going on the bass, and it became a riff. It started by accident actually when we were rehearsing, and then we decided to use it for the actual basis of the parts between the verses. So we go, many, many, many years ago, the town's rocking men died. Where they played every week at Phantom joints. Now we're stood outside. Won't you come inside and see? Please come inside with me to see what the real fun sharks have gone and found. And then it goes into the break part, which is. That part there. So that's but I was 16 when I did that part. So
I love it. I always did.
And I haven't
time for me to learn that.
played that song actually since the Sharks finished up the last round of shows. So it's been a while.
So that song is in E minor. What is that?
Yeah, E minor. Yeah. So hence the.
All right, so let's go step by step. So first riff is E, F sharp, G.
Yeah. Like that.
Okay.
Yep. And then we go up to the A. It's all simple stuff, really. I was 16. Second part.
Okay, so first it goes like
yeah, and then
walk down.
Yeah, so A, G, F sharp, F, E. Yeah.
Okay, and over there you're playing open strings, right?
Like that. That's right, yeah.
All right. Then?
And so, yeah, just go into that minor riff once, and then finish on the B. Straightforward rock and roll B 12-bar style octave pattern.
So I have to do that.
Yeah.
I have a question. So you are mixing up E minor with E major, right? So you're playing from this, then you're playing this.
Yeah. So
okay.
from a minor to a major, yeah. But it was fine because I mean overall the song, I think the song's just in E minor, E major actually. But because there was no rhythm going on, myself and Alan were just doing that part as a pattern. You could go from the minor to the major without any problems. It was the hook, it was the lick.
Ah, so there was no rhythm guitar at
No. A lot of that early Shark stuff is there's no rhythm guitar.
Huh. So and then you're playing unison, all right?
Yeah, playing in unison, yeah. And we wanted that by accident. We just wanted that to become the hook of the song.
That's cool. That's probably the most popular song from the album, right?
Yeah. Well, originally, I don't know if anybody knows this. The album was going to be called Underexposed, and that's why it's got the film strips down the side. And for whatever reason, I really can't remember actually why. It was decided we were going to change the album title to Phantom Rockers.
Well, it seems like a good decision.
Yeah, I'm sure Mark Burke thinks that from the Phantom Rockers band.
Yeah,
he used it for his band.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And you were 16 back then, right?
16, yeah, 16 when we made the Phantom Rockers album.
Were you the youngest in the band?
No, me and the drummer Hodge were the same age, 16, school friends together. Alan was 4 years older, so he was 20.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, let me before I forget everything you showed me. Do you mind doing it again? Like so.
The whole thing?
Yeah. You're mixing up a little bit, you know, like you don't play it always the same, right?
Well, I never did. No, that's pretty much the same.
All these slaps are every time different. All right, so yeah. I'll try to remember it and then play.
Slaps always get slipped in when I get excited.
Oh yeah, we haven't gone through the ending. So when you go to B, it's like a boogie woogie line, but except the sixth, you're playing the octave, right? You're playing B, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, B.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yes. I think I got the whole thing down. Like, but you know, if I make a mistake, sorry. I've
made mistakes today, so don't worry.
All right.
Perfect. That was perfect.
Thanks. A few people asked about your technique. So what are the one question that I always like asking my guests, what is the terminology that you're using when you're playing? Are you using that like single slap, double slap, triple slap type of thing, or you're using something else?
Yeah. So when I first started playing, all I knew was what I would call a single slap. So just your normal. So technically, you're just hitting the neck and pulling the string just once. So that's what I would call just a single slap. And that's all I knew how to do with all the shaking quiff stuff. But then when we went to so here's a story. We got signed to do a couple of tracks for what ended up on the Stack of Records album with the shaking quiffs. As I explained earlier, we were too young to drive. So my mother dropped us off at the Bath Spa railway station, and my bass was in its sleeping bag covers, which is all I could afford. We put the bass in the cargo carriage of the train, and it braked violently somewhere en route, and the bass fell from its side onto the bridge and split the bridge straight down the middle. And I was mortified. That was our big break. We were going to London to record for Nervous Records, and you can imagine how that felt to, well, I was a 15-year-old kid then. And I was close to tears, to be honest. And when we got to London Paddington, Roy Williams was there to collect us from Nervous Records. And I told him what had happened, and he said, just bear with me. I'm going to make a phone call. So he went to the payphone, no mobile phones then. And I didn't know at the time that he was phoning Sam Sari from the Ricochets. Now, I loved that Ricochets album, and there's some fantastic slap techniques on Made in the Shade. So the worst thing about it, though, was when Sam turned up. I was very pleased to meet him, and we got on very well from the start. But my strings on my bass were that far apart because the bridge had been fitted by us back in the sticks at home, and Sam's strings on his bass were that far apart, and I couldn't play the bass, and I had to work on it for a good hour just to sort of get anything out of it. Anyway, the recordings went okay, and I was quite pleased with what I did, but I could only do all the single slap stuff. And anyway, so when there was some mixing going on and some bits and pieces in the control room, I went back into the bass booth, and I said to Sam, "Hey, how'd you do that sound? You know, that other slapping stuff." And he said, "Yeah, Steve, what do you mean? What do you mean?" In his wonderful voice that he does. And I said, "I just can't do that bounce off thing. You know, that I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. No one's ever been able to show me, and I've not been able to look at it or hear it or read it anywhere that I can understand it." So he showed me how to do that, which was fantastic because it really is just a little pop. As if you were playing the swing cymbal on the drums. It's just the same thing. And I kind of got a handle on that within a few minutes. And then I said, "What's that fantastic thing that you do in Hitman on the Made in the Shade album? I don't even know what to call that. How do you do it?" And he said, "Well, Steve, that's called a triple slap. It's a triple slap. You want to show you how to do it?" And I said, "God, yeah." So he did. And it's... And I didn't quite get that one as quickly as I did what I would call the double slap, but I bodged my bass back together enough to be stood up in the cargo carriage on the train all the way home back to my hometown. And by the time I got back, 2 strings is all I could get to stay on the bass, and I'd learned how to do it. So yeah, and so Samsari was quite instrumental in, excuse the pun, in getting me to do the double and the triple slaps.
So single slap you would consider basically just pulling the string, right? And this pattern,
yeah.
How do you call that?
I call that a double slap.
You call that double slap, yeah, and yeah. When you play triplets, you call that triple slap.
Yeah, like, yeah.
And how would you call, like, when you're playing, when you pull and you do one of these?
Yeah.
How would you call that?
I just call that a single. Yeah.
Oh, and how would you call when you just pull the string, like?
Yeah, that's what I call a single. But then you put that together with some notes. So
got it. But like, so you're using single slap for this and for this?
Yeah, I still call that the same thing. It's just that all you're doing really, it's what I was saying to you earlier about some of the bass players that influenced me from the 80s scene were making it like a metronome. So to me, all you're doing there, you do that and then do that. It's the same thing. It's just you're hitting the neck harder before you pull the string. Do you know what I mean? So I still think that's the same thing. And of course, then when you put the notes together, you're going to bounce between the different notes that you're holding down. So you're just doing it more with a bounce. You see what I mean? So if I do that same riff without hitting the neck all the way hard, it's the same thing as going. So I'm just hitting the neck that little bit harder, but it's still just the same single slap technique, in my opinion.
Okay, this show is about you, so I want to hear your opinion. When I interview myself, I'll give my opinion. And is there any other pattern that you're using?
Well, yeah, I do quads. Oh, shit, I am rusty. Okay. So a quad. Bloody hell.
And which fingers are you using? Are you using these two or these two?
I just play with these 3, actually.
Are you with 3?
Yeah, I play flat-handed, but the little finger really doesn't touch very much.
So middle and finger.
All three of those fingers on the slap.
All
hand.
three, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Believe me, I rehearsed with Frenzy on Thursday night, and they're all sore.
so like this, you call that quadruple, right? Quad?
Quad, yeah.
That?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well, Nick, you just wrote, that's a hard slap for me. I have to think too much.
Well, I'm rusty, so I'm having to think too much as well at the moment. Normally,
We
it's
are.
a little bit more.
No gigs on site.
I think everybody's rusty because they're not playing enough at the minute.
I noticed that sometimes you're playing. I'm not sure if you have a different name for that or not. Like sometimes you're playing that that slap that you call double slap. I usually call it gallop.
Okay.
Sometimes
gallop.
you play it with like that, like a swing feel, and sometimes you play it faster. Do you call both of these slap? Do you call both of these double?
So I don't. So a lot of those you guys that do that kind of I can't. You sort of roll off your the back of your hand.
That's something else. You're talking about this. Yeah, I was not meaning that, but I heard on frenzy stuff. On frenzy stuff, you sometimes do, like, for example, you don't do it like it's like a faster, and it's the same pattern, just played faster and a little bit later. So it's not. It's dung kakadung kakadung kakadung. I heard you playing that, so I was just wondering if you're. When you do that, if you do that, I'm sure that you're doing that intentionally. Just do you call that a different pattern, or is it the same thing?
I just call that a skip.
Okay.
I call it a skip, yeah. So a lot of you guys do that with the, you go from the back of the hand to the front. I can't even do that. I don't do it that way. I just do it.
That's something that I always liked about your playing, and not many people are using that in the 80s, because they were usually doing that more of a swing, even if it's that pattern. But you kind of do it, which I kind of always liked when I was hearing that.
Yeah. But I just doing it because I felt like I could do a little skip between the notes. And then a lot of guys that are doing it more recently now, I've seen you do it. You bounce across from the back of the hand to the front when you do it. I can't do that.
There are different ways to do it. And any other patterns that you're using?
That's basically all the different slap techniques, So. A little bit of all of that sort of thing all together,
I like that you play like a little glissando, a little slide once. And I remember that when I heard for the first time, "This Is the Fire," where you're playing that using the triple slap, and then you have like some slides.
Yeah,
I always thought that was pretty cool.
Well, when all the contact pickups were pretty much the only thing that a lot of people were using, when you do a slide on the bass, it's lost. The contact pickup just can't really deal with it. So you just heard the start and you heard the end, but you didn't hear the bit in between. Yeah, exactly. And then if you switch to the magnetic pickups, which I switched to in '89, which is about the time we did "This Is the Fire," when you did the slide.
Oh, okay, interesting.
It made your trousers wobble in the studio, and I thought, yeah, I'll do a bit more of that because I like that. And that's
Okay.
I do it a lot now too, and run downs and stuff when we stop in Icy Red.
That's actually one of the reasons why I'm using magnetics as well.
Yeah, because what you do on the fingerboard comes out of your bass gear, and that's what you want. With the contact pickups of the old days, that just didn't happen.
It just disappeared. It's so weird. Like as far as I mean, my impression in like a bass, where's bass the most featured on Frenzy songs? Those were, this is again my opinion, but I want to hear your opinion. Were always the songs Frenzy and Frustration, Misdemeanor, Asylum Moves, Can't Stop, Robot Riot, 89.
Yeah, the different version on the This Is the Fire album, yeah.
Yeah, because I know that Robot Riot you did, like you used some rumbas and then some triplets, and Schizophrenic Emotions as well. I think that's where you combine those little gallops and single slap. So I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I mean that was a killer song to play, Schizophrenic Emotions. In fact, even on the recording, because a lot of the stuff we did was at the very early stages was a lot more live. So earlier we were talking about when you build things up in the recording process, but a lot of those Hall of Mirrors and Phantom Rockers albums were done initially live. So the bass, the drums, and the rhythm guitar would go down together. And if you listen to Schizophrenic Emotions from that recording on Hall of Mirrors, in one section of it, because it's heavily bass driven, and there's like solo parts in it before you go into the guitar breaks, you can hear I lose the timing because I was playing so fast for so long, and we'd done a few takes of it already. The lactic acid was building up in my arm, and I got to the point where I've got to stop. And then I instantly thought, no, I can't. This take's going so well. And you hear just that little bit where I break off for a second because I nearly didn't make it through. But that's the joys of the live recordings from the early stages. It was much faster then, and I was much younger, of course. My arms were younger.
Would you say that you were faster than now?
It's difficult to quantify that because I play steel-derived strings now. I mean, these are still nylon wound. These are Presto ultralights. So generally, I'm playing with higher tension strings. I think I can still play pretty fast, although it's not as important to me as it used to be. But I could definitely play faster on the old nylon-based strings that I used back in those days, you know. But I still got it, baby.
Oh, another thing that I want to mention, like, you know, I talked a little bit earlier, and I think that we talked about it like when I first met you when you played in Oakland. When I heard your intro for Wild Nights, and you play like two notes, like the kind of like double stops. I thought it was the coolest thing. You know, I remember like when I heard that, I was like, you know, I have to learn this. It was a long time ago, but you know, I think I'll try to remember how it went. I think it was like this.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you see, that's where you're going to show me up because I remember that conversation. I remember it well, and I was gutted because you could play that, and I actually overdubbed that in the studio.
Well, you made me learn it. You know, I was like, you know, I have to learn this. This sounds so cool.
This young guy turns up at a backstage area and shows me how to do it properly, and I was just doing the beginning, and then I overdubbed, put the two together. But you play them, but I haven't got that reach. You know
yeah,
I mean?
I thought it was the coolest thing ever when I heard that. I was super stoked.
Yeah, I can only just reach that. I can only just reach that. See, that's what comes from being having a degree or whatever in music. But to play that riff, I mean, I'm sure that little finger would break off if I did that.
Well, you know, you inspired me to do that, so I thought it was the coolest thing. Back then, I was always looking. I mean, I was in Serbia, of course, so I didn't have a chance like to talk to anyone that played slap bass, except like maybe one or two guys that were playing a little bit in my hometown. But everything I learned was from the records, you know, jazz records, psychobilly records, rockabilly, bluegrass, or whatever. So I just tried to learn everything that I could hear. And then I remember that intro. It was really, really cool. It made me explore more things with the double stops and, you know, play different intervals. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of area that people still don't do that often. Actually, I was talking to Scott Owen a month or month and a half ago on the Slapstream when he was a guest, and he mentioned you as an influence as well. I haven't asked him about that song, but I know that he sometimes uses some double stops as well.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, cool. That's good to know. You know,
yeah.
but that whole thing that you did there with that Wild Night, I can't even remember what I said. Did I tell you that I did it, or did I tell you that I overdubbed it?
You told me that you overdubbed it. Yeah.
All right then. I told you the truth.
You told me something like, "Oh, I can do it that way," just like I thought it sounded better, like if I overdub it.
Yeah, well, I lied about the fact I would do it that way.
Well, it's still one of the coolest riffs for rockabilly bass, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely,
So,
Mitch
it's a
called.
good thing.
Mitch is fantastic intro to a song.
I remember it. I remember it from both Blue Cats and your version as well.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you about you. We talked about Sharks and we talked about Frenzy, but we haven't talked about Restless. When did you join Restless, and
Well,
how did that happen?
Well, Restless were at the top of their game in the early 80s. That influential Why Don't You Just Rock album, I mean, you don't have to say any more about that. It was just absolutely fantastic. Big influence on me. Paul Harmon, great bass player. And I got friendly with the guys, Clubfoot years and all that kind of thing, going up to see them at the Headstone, always sharing a beer, became friends. And just out of the blue one day, I had a phone call from Pete Gage, their manager. This was pretty early 1989, maybe March time, something like that. It all seems to be March for me. So technically at that time, Restless had split. Jeff Bailey had left the band, or they had a parting of ways at least. I don't really know what happened. But it was just two guys left, which was Ben and Mark. And then they've been offered Japan. And Japan was a really special thing. You didn't get offered that kind of thing every day. Most of us have been trying to get out to Japan for a long time with no success. Anyway, Restless have been offered this whole deal, but they weren't technically a band. Pete Gage said to the guys, "What do we do? We're going to do it? We're not going to do it? Who do we call in to do it?" And from what I've been told previously, they just said, "Give Steve Whitehouse a ring." So I got the phone call on a landline, and then an official letter afterwards on Pete Gage headed notepaper asking me to do the Japanese tour. They said, "How long do you want to prepare for a set list?" They sent me a set list, and I said, "I don't really need to prepare. I know all those songs really well." And we set aside 2 days to rehearse before we went to Japan. About 4 shows, I think. Rehearsing at Pete's house, and we needed about 2 hours. So we did 2 hours rehearsing. The set was in the bag, and we spent the next day and a half partying. And then I stayed in Restless for 5 years after that. Fantastic period for me, because they were some people in a band that I looked up to. I went back to Restless. I've decked for them quite a few times in between when other bass players haven't been able to make it, when they've been between bass players or whatever. And I went back to them full time for 2018. And now Jeff's back with them at the minute. And this was supposed to be their final year actually, and they were going to retire, but the COVID thing has stopped that, and they're going to carry on for another year. But we have a nice special thing planned for the end of next year, so watch this space. But yeah, I've been with Restless for 6 years altogether.
Is that the same time period when Mark was playing with Frenzy?
It overlapped. Yeah. So I first joined them in March '89, and then I think from summer '89 to the end of '89, Mark was playing guitar for us. I found that was an interesting combination, actually, those styles all mixed in together, which was good. Yeah. But he did it to the end of the year before Carl Parry joined the band.
Ah. You know, you can leave your bass. I don't want you to like stand there. I would prefer to hear you, closer when you sit down.
I'm used to thinking on it. I didn't know if you want me to do any more.
I will at the very end, but we have just been talking for 2.5 hours. So
is it 2.5 hours now? Oh, I'll put the camera back down. I'm sorry I'm playing so badly actually tonight, because I just
come on, man, you sound great.
We
are all so rusty. I mean, I started this until I started this, I hardly played at all. So it's just like, I have to do something, that's gonna make sense in my life, musically. I miss touring, I miss playing with the band. I miss people, I miss the fans. So
everything. Touring, I love touring, and I miss it terribly. And also when you're touring, you get into a groove, and your whole system and your body starts to flow, and things become second nature on the double bass. So especially when you sing, everything just becomes second nature. But at the minute, I'm having to think about everything. This old brain can't think far enough ahead anymore.
We're different people now. And so what was the first thing that happened? Mark Harmon in the Frenzy, or Steve Whitehouse in the Restless?
Steve Whitehouse in Restless, yeah.
Oh, okay. And then you guys overlap in Frenzy.
Yeah, I mean, we were touring as Restless, and I wasn't really playing with Frenzy at that point. It was a weird situation. We were between guitarists, so I kind of just given up for a little bit, and I thought I'll deal with that later. I'm too busy with Restless. And then we got offered tours and gigs, and I said, I've been offered this, I've been offered that, Finland, Germany, can't do it, haven't got a guitarist. And Mark just said, I'll do it. So that's what we did till the end of the year. So I think his first gig with us was not long after we got back from Japan in May '89. We did the Japanese tour, and then I got offered the Frenzy shows not long after that. So Mark just said, yeah, I'll just do it. It's fine. And that's what we wanted. Yeah.
That's so cool. Are there any special memories from those tours?
Yeah, there's always special memories with me and Mark. Play fights. We used to do terrible play fights. I swear to God, they almost ended up as real punch-ups. So the game was, when we'd had far too many Jack Daniels on the tour, backstage in the hotel, was who could hit each other in the arms here and here, get in there without being blocked, and whoever had the least bruises in the morning was the winner. We used to do that a lot. I got lots and lots of memories of that, and it used to get very competitive. And arm wrestling too. We used to arm wrestle a lot. Mark reckons he won all those, but I won quite a lot of those. You see, it's the bass playing arm.
That's cool. And then after, actually, there was a question about Mark. Someone that did not know that Mark played the guitar for Frenzy. I've never heard that ever. Are there any recordings of videos?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. We didn't do any recordings, definitely. Videos, you never know what creeps up on YouTube. It happens, we find footage occasionally that we never knew existed. So there may be something on there from that period. I think, if I remember, it was quite a big Finnish tour promoting the This Is the Fire album, or we called it This Is the Fire tour. I don't think the album was actually quite out at the time. And then we did two German things as well as like festivals and stuff here and there. But he was never really a member of Frenzy, and he wanted that to be known. He was just standing in. He was just standing in. But if you look at the first Best of Frenzy album, you'll see Mark on there. There's a little period. There's a timeline up to the end of that point, mean, Frenzy was only 7 years old when that album, The Best of Frenzy, came out. And there's a little timeline in there that shows where Mark fitted in. So if you've got that album, take a look. And if you haven't got it, buy it on eBay and then take a look.
And do you know how many guitar players you had in Frenzy?
Yes. So, well, I've missed a guy out in this, actually. I hope he's not watching because he'll hate me for it. So Spike Arrow from, do you remember the 80s neo-rockabilly band, The Rapids?
Oh, just by name. I don't know any of their recordings.
Spike played for us for a little while as well. And he is actually featured on quite a lot of the This Is the Fire album tracks.
Okay.
So he's there. So I apologize for not mentioning him before. So it was Simon Brand, Kev Saunders, Spike Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick, Mark Harmon, Carl Parry, Steve Eaton. Seven guitarists that we've had.
And drummers?
Drummers, Merv Pepler. Everyone must remember that from the first Frenzy incarnation. So me, Merv Pepler, Simon Brand. He carried on then through the Kev Saunders period. And the reason that Merv ended up not being in the band was as we were putting the finishing touches to the mixes of the Clockwork Toy album, the record label told us that they'd assigned us to an agency and that we could give up our jobs, and they had this tour and that tour planned, this promotion thing, that record in-store thing, that TV show, that radio show. You don't need to work anymore. So we were all excited and told Merv, and Merv said, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I've got to finish my engineering apprenticeship. And we thought, you know, what? This is what we've all been waiting for, the big break. And now you're saying you don't want to do it? Even his dad said that he could take a break from the apprenticeship because the apprenticeship was his father's engineering firm. And he said, take a break, see if it works for you, and then come back if it doesn't. But he still wanted to finish his engineering apprenticeship. So we were left on the cusp of all this fantastic, exciting new career and a drummer that didn't want to go full time. So we'd known Adam for a very long time. And as like I say, from about eight years old. He's 2 years younger than me, so I must have been around 10. And his mum knew my mum. And we used to go over there and watch them play with their little, they were famous locally for being really young kids playing in a band, doing all the working men's clubs in the pubs. And they had to have special permission to go into the pubs and play because they were underage. And they were called Phoenix. And they were fantastic. You couldn't believe the ability that those kids had. He was a great drummer. And Pete Gage was producing the Clockwork Toy album. And he said to me, you need to take this break. You need to, grasp it with both hands and go for it. It's your career. You need to find a different drummer. So from the studio, we phoned Adam's home. And so he was 16 then. I was 18, I think. And spoke to his mum and said, do you think Adam would want to join the band? And she said, shit, yeah. I don't care what he says. He's joining the band. And then Adam came to the band and he was with us, blimey, all the way through then till, I'm finding it hard to remember, but 96, I think, all the way through from 86 to 96. And then he took a little break and then came back in 2006, and he's been with us ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, we had Adam would occasionally have a little break because he would get fed up from the touring. He didn't technically leave the band, but he would take an agreed break. So another guy called Alex Butterfield was our drummer for a while. And then funnily enough, Carl Parry, our guitarist of all those years, he's one of those lucky gits that can play anything that they touch. He was a great drummer too. So he came back and played drums on Frenzy's Dirty Little Devils album and played some live shows with us for a little while. And then we had another guy called Rob Chapman, who sadly isn't with us anymore, passed away. But he came and did a little bit, and then Adam decided to come back. And like I say, been with us ever since.
So 5-6 drummers?
Yeah, I think so. About five drummers, I think. Yeah.
And that guy, I forgot his name. He mentioned Okay, he didn't write his name. All Hat No Cattle asked about Mark playing in Frenzy, and when you played with the Restless, how many recordings are there with that lineup?
Okay, I got to get this right now. So we first album I recorded with Restless was called Moving On, which I think is my favorite of the recordings. That was on Madhouse Records, and then that was me, Mark, and Ben Cooper. And then the next one was called Number 7. I think it was that way around. Yes, it was Number 7, and that's me, Mark, and Rob Tyler, who is a fantastic drummer and was with Restless for quite some time, that period. And then the third and final album, I think, I hope I'm getting that right, with Restless was called Figure It Out, which involved Sean Kirkpatrick, who had been one of these guitar players for a little while, albeit just in the studio, and co-producer. He produced the Figure It Out album for Restless. And then, of course, in more recent years, we discovered that I had a live recording from those early Japanese gigs that I did. We went into the studio, and it was just on a cassette, actually, but it sounded so good, we wanted to do something with it. So we took it in the studio, edited it, and just put it for a channel and boosted the bass in the top end. And it was so good, we just cut it together and released Restless Live in Tokyo 1989. So technically that means I'm on 4 Restless albums.
And after that, both of you joined Slim Jim Phantom Trio, or that was later on?
That was later on. So that was early 2009 we were asked to do that. Mark Harmon called me one day and said, Slim Jim's contacted me and wants to do Slim Jim Trio, do a tour of Europe. And he said, are you available to do it? And I said, yeah, definitely. So it was literally as simple as that. I was on top of a ladder at work doing some roofing when Mark called me about that. I remember it really well. So that was early 2009. And then we went ahead and we didn't even rehearse for that tour at all. We sent each other CDs, me, Slim, and Mark, worked out a set list. And then when we got to the first gig at the Water Rats in London, Slim Jim decided that he wanted to change the set. And he wrote another set out and said, do you know those? And we were like, yeah. And we did a gig in front of a packed house without ever rehearsing. I think we sound checked 3 songs.
Yeah.
And then did a whole tour.
Yeah, I know how that goes with Slim Jim, and I played with him quite a bit as well.
Good tour though. It's really good. Lots of fun.
It's fun. I bet.
Yeah. We had a good time with that. Met lots of different people that we would normally do in our own circle, and of course, playing with Slim Jim from the Stray Cats, band that you'd seen on Top of the Pops and bought their singles when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, Jimmy's a great guy.
Yeah,
but
great.
If I remember correctly, did Restless had some kind of beef with the Stray Cats? Did they write something on one of their albums in the back, something about the Stray Cats?
I don't know. I'm not aware of
you
that.
Know?
No. I'm aware of the Meteors writing nasty things about us. I'm aware of the Meteors writing nasty things about us on their album covers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A couple of gravestones with Restless and Frenzy on the front of one of their albums. But hey ho, I'm not worried. But that's the only thing I'm aware of. I don't think, that's not what sort of thing that Restless do, to be honest.
So you had a beef with the Meteors back then, or is that still going on?
No, they had a beef with me.
Ah.
No, it's all over and done with. I get on really well with Paul now. You either love him or hate him. I get on well with Paul. No problems there anymore. But I was number 1 on the death list for many years.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, but there you go. I had to be very careful. I got chased. Where were we to? Wurzburg, in Germany, and we had our big 40-foot tour bus that we built ourselves. We couldn't afford all the big nightliners like all the bands had, so we made our own nightliner out of a big bus. And I can remember being at the venue, and there was some diehard Meteors fans there in front, and obviously didn't like me. And after the show, I'd had far too many jacks, and I wasn't really aware, didn't care. And then our roadie Dennis came in, and he said, "I think we need to get the fuck out of here." I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because you're going to get the shit kicked out of you in a minute." And I remember running down the street towards the tour bus where it was parked, and only just making it into the door, being chased with axes and machetes and things like that. And that night, Dennis, Demolition Dennis as we called him then, Dickie Dennis as he is now, saved my life. Good old Dennis. But there, that's how bad it got. But hey, man, we're all good now. Those are the days of egos and stuff. Everything's changed. We're all friends now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You have a Thomas, like Fan Thomas. He wrote good bass part on Tobacco Road on the Moving On album. Thank
you. Yeah. Actually, the Tobacco Road song, which became a single, actually, a Restless single from the Moving On album, was my idea. I'm a massive David Lee Roth fan, or I was then, not so much now, but I was then. I was listening to it a lot. And so it was on quite often in the van when we were touring around. I used to play the David Lee Roth albums, and David Lee Roth, I think it's the Nashville Teens that did it originally, but I loved the David Lee Roth version a lot. So it was always on in the van. And Pete Gage said to us one day, just as we're driving along in Germany somewhere, "I think Restless should record that." And it was as simple as that. So the next time we were in the studio, that's exactly what we did. Actually, I think it was the first song that we recorded for or during the Moving On sessions. And it came out so well, it was decided to release it as a single. Yeah, it was good fun recording that. And it was that was the first time I didn't have any live ambient mic on the double bass when I was recording. It's literally just the magnetic pickups and the slap pickup direct inject into the desk. And that was the first time I'd ever done that. It's like that on that whole album, actually. I don't do that now. And before it was just two microphones, no pickup into the desk. And then I started doing it with the two microphones and the pickup. But then on that session, we decided just to do direct inject with the mags and the slap pickup into the desk. And I think it worked well. Good sound on that, I think. Can't remember the parts very well.
Before we move on, I would like to feature another Mia comment. "Hey, Dad, sounding great," from Emily.
So that's my youngest daughter, and she's too young to have social media. She's only 10. She's not allowed social media yet. And so she's decided to send a message to Dad through Mia. "Hi, Emily. Love you, babe. Love you all."
Hi, Emily. Hi, Mia. You have a comment from Japan. "I'm watching in Japan. I would love to be able to hear to read this name, but I'm not.
No,
not yet.
No, I can't read it either. I'm sure it's somebody I know. That Japanese fans are fantastic. I love going to Japan.
I never played Japan. I'm I mean, I would love to play. I had like a few times, like some people calling me like to do some master classes, but it never worked out at the end. But I would love to go and play.
It's wonderful. They're really fantastic and warm audience, and they genuinely love rock and roll and rockabilly music out there. They can't get enough of it, and they easily transitioned into the neo-rockabilly and the psychobilly scene. To them, it's no different. It's the Teddy Boys come along to the shows and listen to psychobilly shows. They just love it, and they look after you so well. Never been treated so well as anywhere in the world as I have in Japan. I love the Japanese audiences. They're great. We used to go there every year, sometimes twice a year. The last time I was in Japan was February 2019 when I went with the Shaking Pyramids. We did a Shaking Pyramids tour over there, which was pretty cool. And we're in negotiations right now to go back to Japan next year. If all this shit stops, we're going to go with the Blue Cats.
Oh, cool. So you played in the band Shaking Pyramids as well?
Yeah, I played a few shows with the Shaking Pyramids with Jim. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Just the Japanese tour was the highlight, and a couple of little festivals here and there as well.
Nice.
Yeah. It was just a little. We needed to get something off of our chests, and I'd spoken to Jim about it. We'd become friends on Facebook, and we just decided to go for it. And somebody got wind of it, and then we were asked by a Japanese promoter to go out there. It was good.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I would like to switch to the Blue Cats. So when did you join Blue Cats?
I was asked again in March. I was asked to join them in March 2011, and I've been with them ever since.
And you've been with them ever since?
Yeah, yeah. So I can't remember if I said this earlier in the program or not, but I am officially the longest serving.
You did?
Blue. Yes.
Yeah.
If it was in the sound check or not, but yeah, I am. It's 10 years in the band next March.
That's great. I always loved that band, especially the album Tunnel. I always thought that was. I know that's with a different bass player, but
yeah,
those songs are great. I love it.
Proud to be asked actually to join. So when Paul Diffin was playing with the Blue Cats, he was in a band that was supporting Frenzy on tour, and then the Blue Cats had to start a German tour, and it crossed over by a couple of days, so he had to leave the tour before it was ended. He was playing in a band, some diehard fans out there might remember, called the Shaken Vax, which is a play on words of a carpet cleaner in the UK. And the guy that was singing was very eccentric, but they were great. They were funny, they were cool. And Paul Diffin was playing bass for them. And the Blue Cats wanted to start the tour, and they came along to see Frenzy play to pick up Paul at the Errata in Moors in Germany. And that's when they saw, all the Blue Cat guys saw Frenzy play for the first time, which I'm glad that they did, because they remembered that. And it's one of the reasons that they asked me to join the Blue Cats much later on in my career. But Paul had to go before 2 shows had been completed with the Shaken Vax. And I had to play bass in the support band as well as in Frenzy for a couple of shows so that those guys could do those shows, which is something I've never forgot. So there's a few members of the Caravans in that band as well, I remember. But yeah, that's when Clint, Carlo and Steph saw me play live, and they liked my sound and style, and then they asked me to join the Blue Cats all those years later.
That's so cool. And I gotta say, I mean, I only heard the record that you did with them, and I thought it sounded fantastic. So I'm looking forward for more of that.
Yeah. I'm really proud of Best Dawn Yet, the album I did with the Blue Cats, and the single Billy Ruffians. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my career, but I would say that that album is pretty much up there as one of the best things I did. Especially awesome. The playing, I felt we've been playing a lot at that time with Frenzy and the Blue Cats, and I felt I was on top of my game musically, which I'm not today. But anyway, I felt like I was, and when I went into the studio, I felt like I had a lot to give, and it just seemed to flow out of me, those sessions. I'll never forget, actually, when we were doing Blue Prairie on that album, and I was putting all my bass parts down on that. And there's a part where it goes from being like a Sons of the Pioneers kind of sounding song, Cowboys Round the Campfire, which Clint loves. Mm-hmm. It went from that to a Gene Vincent style guitar break. And I started playing finger bass. And I had a little plan of what I wanted to do in my head. And if you listen to the end of the solo, as the solo comes to an end, and we go back into the cowboy part, I did some wonderful little slide downs that just fell out of me. And I looked up as I'd done them because I felt good about it. And all 3 of the Blue Cat guys were in the control room. I could see them through the glass doors. And they flew up into the air with their fists in the air, as if to say, fuck yeah, that was awesome. That didn't half make me feel good. It still does to this day.
That's so cool. I would like to switch a little bit to talk about your gear and your pickups. Like quite a few people asked about your pickup, like Johnny Gomez, tell us about your brand of pickups. So can we start with that? You've been making your own pickups for a while now, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I first switched to mag pickups, it was important to me to do that. It was almost instantly as I joined Restless, to be honest, when I came back from Japan. I wanted a fatter sound. I was fed up with feedback. And so we all used to use these. Djordje, we used to use, this is a polytone pickup. A lot of bass players that are a bit longer in the tooth like me would recognize that. Let's get that in the middle there. So that goes between the two legs on the bridge. And I was aware of these because the bass player in one of my favorite bands back then, who they really influenced me to get going in music, was the Polecats. Neo-rockabilly kings, just like the Blue Cats. And anyway, I went to see the Polecats in 1981 in Bath, near a town near me, and my mum dropped me off when we went to see. And he was using, Phil Bloomberg was using one of these, and I thought, I've got to get one of those. And I know a lot of the other players, like Little John in the Deltas, were using these as well, amongst many others, Mitch Cause. These were great, and they were a step forward at the time. They're called a polytone, and they were renowned for breaking down on the seal just there. But the biggest issue was they would feed back like a fury, and you had to get the balance just right all the time, stuff the bass full of foam, and God knows what else to stop it feeding back. And it was always a limitation. And you either had that or you had one of these. Now, this is a shadow, but it's a blatant copy of what they used to call the Underwood, which other bass players that influenced me, who are fantastic still are, like Anders James from the Stargazers and the Rhythm Cats, were using the more Underwood style pickup. But the same thing applied. They would feed back like a fury. And I was fed up with it. It actually used to make me dread sound checks because of the feedback issues. You wanted more power. Frenzy were a powerful band, Restless, powerful band, and I couldn't get the power I wanted. So obviously I knew that Lee Rocker at some point had, all the time actually, was using magnetic pickups on his bass. And I was speaking to Fred Polk about it in recent years, and from Matchbox. And he is of the opinion that he was one of the first ones to put mag pickups on double bass in 1973. And I wanted that. I wanted the power. I wanted the tone so you could hear every note. So I decided to make my own. I had nobody around me to show me how to do it. I went into my garage at home, or my parents' garage at home, and I cut some wood out and did what I thought looked right from pictures that I'd seen. And I bought some EMG select pickups from the local music shop, and I fiddled around with it until it all came together. I still have my slap pickup separately. I use 2 channels and I go into 2 amps. And then the PA have got more control because they've got 2 separate channels to mix together between the slap and the bass. But I plugged the whole thing in for the first time. I couldn't believe the difference in the sound. I was so happy. And I used that set of pickups that I made in 1989 right up until about 6 years ago. And then it started to go wrong, started to fail. I tried to fix it, and it was a temporary fix. It would fail again. They were pretty old, and they'd done a lot of work. So I thought I'd make myself a new set, but I'd do it all properly. And then I came up with my own STEVE Whitehouse signature model magnetic double bass pickups, which is on a nice, handy little pack. And I tended to use EMGs still because I'm still sponsored by EMG, actually. These are EMG Johnsons on here. And I fiddled with it and started putting some things on Facebook once I sort of honed it in a little bit. And I got some messages from people that I would consider idols of mine, asking if I would make them a set. So I made Phil Polcat a set, and I made Boz Bora a set for Lynn Bora to use on her bass from the Shillelagh Sisters, etc. I kept honing it and changing it around until I got exactly what I wanted and made it easy to fit. So the idea of these is that in this pack that's as simple as this. You can see on the basses behind me there, they've both got my signature model pickups on. I do 4 or 5 in the range. I did it so that you could adjust the height behind the fingerboard. But I can fit this in a couple of minutes when I get to gigs. So I can fly with this in my hand luggage, get to a show, and I can string the bass up when I get there with my Presto Ultralights or my Tomastic Spiral cores, which I use all the time. And I get the whole bass running in about half an hour. Strings and everything. Put my own model slap pickup underneath the neck at the back, which Phil Polcat and Sam Sardi showed me how to do all those years ago, and I still use that method now. And ready to go in half an hour, because the problem was when you turned up at shows with a rented bass when you were flying, I used to take a bass with me on the plane, but they were always getting broke in the hold, as most bass players will tell you happens all the time. And so I gave up with that, and then I had a stick bass. I was sponsored by Aria Pro in Japan and developed a stick bass, which was easier to take on the plane, but just doesn't have the same image and stuff, and it was pretty difficult to hold on stage. I kept getting cramps in my arm. So I had to resort to having a loaner. Every bass player in a band will tell you this. Everyone's watching, listening now, they hate the loaner bass. So I developed the pack so I could take the loaner bass, whatever that was, take a bridge, take strings, take pickups, and make it my own bass in half an hour. So when I do the fly in, fly out pack, as I call it, I can fit that with some gaffer tape around the fingerboard and 2 zip cable ties in 2 minutes, and then you plug in, and the output there is passive, don't need any batteries or anything to go wrong. There's one solder joint in the jack output there. That's it. The solder joints come pre-soldered by the manufacturers of the actual pickup blocks. There's very little to go wrong. Plug in and play. Once I developed that for a little bit, I wanted more power, because your average mag pickup in a sort of precision bass style like this is around 6.5 to 8.5 K passive output. I contacted a company and asked them to make them for me with between 11 and 12 K passive output, and they did. So they wound the pickups to my spec, and I bought them in bulk. Man, when you put that into an amp now, that blasts like crazy, and there's no feedback issues whatsoever. And then the same company developed the Slap pickup for me, which is just a standard contact acoustic piezo, but I got them to make the chamber in the pickup a little bit wider, so it's more output. And so that's my signature Slap pickups as well. So yeah, I can chuck that all on a bass and not have to worry about it sounding crap, and just get on with it. And then I've got my rig behind me here, a smaller version of my rig here, to show you how
Before you go there, like I wanna ask you, like, if people want to buy that pickup from you, how should they get in touch with you? Facebook?
Yeah, just Facebook. My own.
Facebook is the best.
Yeah. I'm not really a massive social media animal. I've got my own Facebook page, and if somebody sends me a message through there, even if they're not friends with me, I will get the message, and they can ask me about it. I've sold nearly 400 of them worldwide.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So here is Steve's Facebook. If you want to get the pickup, that is there. And
search Steve Whitehouse anyway, even if you don't see that bit, and get things awkward. Yeah, you'll find me, and I can just message me, and you can arrange that. They're all £160, so it's not a lot of money. Each of the different models is 160 quid plus shipping, and I'll get it out to you. And I've got a little piece of paper now that I send out with it to show people how to fit it and adjust it, because the blocks themselves, what I don't want with this is adjustment on the screws, like if it was in a bass guitar, because the fingerboard on the bass is rattling around like crazy, and all the bits can come loose if it's adjustable. So they're fixed, solidly. And you make the adjustments between this part and the fingerboard, and you can twist and adjust it and move it away or closer, however you want, with little bits of rubber packing, and then you fix it down permanently. You can also, like I said, I fix it with gaffer tape and zip ties when I'm flying in and flying out, but you can also fit it permanently just with 2 screws for the bottom of the fingerboard. And let's face it, most of us do more damage than that to our basses with other things. A couple of holes at the bottom of the fingerboard that you can fill afterwards if you don't want to use it is nothing, and then it's fitted solidly and permanently. And so it works really well. Adrian there, I can see he's put a thing up there.
Yeah, he wrote, I had the pickup signature last year for my birthday, and it's really amazing. I play really faster and better. So it makes me play faster too.
Yeah. Well, it's because the thing is, you can do more because you're not conscious of the feedback.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you're having to mute the string between your notations because you're worried that you're going to get the feedback. But with my pickup, you don't get that. Magnetic. A lot of people do magnetic pickups, EMG and whatever, but you know, with a mag pickup, you don't get that worry. So it frees you up to play better, I think.
I would. You mentioned that you play, as far as strings go, you play thematics and which ones?
Presto ultralights.
Presto. So which one do you prefer?
Live, I prefer the Presto ultralights because the low tension Presto ultralights are they're like playing a Rotosound 4000 because they're nylon flat wound. I don't know if you can really see that there. Mm-hmm. They're nylon flat wound, but they have a roped steel core. So you'll never see that on the camera, but the core up each of the strings is roped, it's webbed, so it's really strong. I have never, in the 10 years that I've been playing Presto ultralights, never broken a string ever live. I've broken some on some of my temastics, but I've left them too long, and I've had metal strings on basses when I've had a loner, and I thought, oh, cool, steel string. I don't need to change the strings. I'll just put my mag pickups on, and then got halfway through the gig and the string has snapped. But I've never snapped a Presto ultralight ever. And then in the studio, I use the temastic spiral core, which again is a webbed core, so they last a long time. And I use the super low tension with those.
Oh, the light? Oh, okay. I actually use temastics, and I love temastics.
They're fantastic string.
Yeah.
I use the super flexible as well.
They've been like for the last 5 or 6 years, they've been making like a prototype set strings for me, which is this one.
Oh yeah, cool.
It's not available, like, you know, for public in general, but it's I'm trying to convince them to make it, and I like it that it's a little bit less metallic sounding, and they're gold. They look like gold, so they also look cool.
So what material are they using to make it sound a little bit? You know,
I don't have. I know that it's they started making those for people allergic to nickel, and they started doing something else, and they gave me a first set 5, 6, 7 years ago. I forgot, and they asked me, like, hey, we would like you to try this because you play slap. Maybe you would like to, you know, sound a little bit less metallic than regular spiral cores. I said, sure. Yeah. What's written? It's written spiral rope core. Yeah, that's the only thing that it's written. So
I guess that the metallic sound is being reduced by the outer core. They're using something else for the outer core.
Maybe I'm like the worst guy. You know, I just like try, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. If it works for me, it works for me, and that's all I know.
That is the danger with magnetic pickups is the mid-range metallic growl.
Yeah,
you get from one of those pickups, from one of those sets of strings. So all I do with that is I make sure I roll off a lot of the mid. I get rid of that, and I also when I'm sound checking with the PA crew, I make sure that they take a direct line out of the back of my amp. And it's always post EQ, so the DI direct output is post EQ. So the adjustments I'm making into my amp are what they're receiving at the desk, so they know to roll off the mids. They know what I'm trying to achieve and I tell them, you know, you have to take the mids out, otherwise you get that horrible bass guitar growl, which I hate. So they take out all the tops. And they take out the top mids, and we just leave the low mids and the bass end in. And then when you combine that with the slap pickup, you know, the overall sound receives mids again with the top and the mids. So the pickups are doing two exactly opposite things. And then when you put them together, you get the exact sound you want without that horrible bass guitar growl.
Got it. I understand.
Yeah.
And it's all right, guys. So we are close to the end. If you have a question for Steve, make sure to type it now. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
Well, I'd like to talk about the rig, if I can.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, let me just turn that's it. Oh, it's come naturally there. So basically, I use let's put the chair out of the way, and I use there's two basses here. This is my Blue Cat bass, and the other bass over there is my Frenzy bass. They both got the mags on it, and so this is the one I've been using recently. So I don't use cables anymore. I hate cables. I hate falling over them. I hate the fact that the foot drops on them and the cable breaks halfway through a gig, or you trip over the cable and fall over the monitors into the audience and stuff. So in 2006, I decided to go wireless. So this is my wireless rig here. You can see my output on the bass pickup there coming out of the side, so it doesn't drop out. And then my custom slap pickup is under there, and the output for that is just there. So it's neat and tidy, everything together. And then I go. This is a permanently fixed mag pickup, by the way. You can just see the two screws there, the blackened screws, barely noticeable. And then I go into a Shure radio transmitter setup, and these are my receivers just here. I bought a new set recently, which is better frequencies. This is what I use. I don't know if you can see that there. It's BLX1, BLX4 setup there, and I find the Shure stuff is the most reliable. And you can change the channels and change gains, and there's gains in the transmitter outputs as well. The first version of this I had was square batteries, and they would only last maybe 4 or 5 gigs. But when I bought this new lot recently, when the frequencies became illegal to use on my old set, these use AA batteries, and I can probably do 20 gigs now, maybe more with them. It's much better. They've really honed that design. But I love both. I love both setups. And it's nice and simple to fit on the bass, and it's all tidy. There's no cables going everywhere. I hate all that. So then I go into my receivers here, and I'm using 2 different amps. One is for the bass. I use Mark bass because I love it. I know Kim Neckerman doesn't. He hates them, but he hates Ampeg as well. Never mind. I love the Mark bass. I'm be sponsored by them shortly because I'm just so into their stuff. This is a little Mark 3, and it's 600 watts. The power you get from this is amazing, and the EQ is so easy to use. There's no parametric EQ or any of that kind of rubbish. It's just straightforward, which is what you need. And that goes into, normally I have a pair of these acoustic concept Eminence loaded 15-inch bins, which they're rated at 600 watts each. So there's 1200 watts there for plenty of ceiling before you start clipping. So there's 2 of those together normally in a stack. And then I just have a little cheap vocal PA here. It's only 100 watts. The second transmitter feeds directly into that, and it goes just into a little 1x12 there and a horn for the slap. So I'm just going to do a quick, I'm not sure if you'll get this very well through the microphone there, just being a conference microphone. So the beauty of having separate slap and separate bass amps and outputs is you used to go to shows and see, and you still do, you see all the people with a single output that are different with some of the shadow stuff and all that now, but like the K&K and other pickups that people are using, the PA is just receiving one channel. And the next thing you know, they're saying, oh, I need more slap. I want more slap in the monitors. I want more slap out front, or I want more bass or less bass, whatever. But they can't do it. The PA crew cannot do that then, unless they mess around with the EQ a little bit. This way, they have a single channel for the slap and a single channel for the bass. And if you ask for more slap and you ask for more bass or less or whatever, they can do that with ease and control. And I've always done the same thing. A lot of the bass players in the 80s used to do that as well. And it works pretty well for me. I couldn't go back to any other way. I could never play single channel anymore. So you can hear no feedback, all right in front of the amp, turned up pretty loud, let go of the bass, no feedback. So yeah, it works well. That's what I've always done and always will do. 2 separate channels, radio transmitters. There's some great transmitters out there. Line 6 make a good one, and many and AKG and whatnot. But I prefer the Shure one. I'll never go back to cables. Never ever.
That's so cool. Thanks so much for sharing all of that.
There you go.
And I think we came to the end. Like, is there anything else you wanna add? It's 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Is it?
It's a marathon.
Oh my God! I didn't even realize that. Just looking at the monitor screen here. Yeah, 22:11 over here in the UK.
We just, bass talk never, can never end.
Go on for hours. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this.
Of course.
It's been great fun. You're a great bass player. And,
thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to spend time talking to you. I think I've mentioned everything I wanted to mention to do with the career and whatnot. And thanks to everybody for watching. If you believe in what you do, it'll happen. Strange times at the moment for musicians. I think our careers have come to a grinding halt at the moment, but we will prevail. We will prevail. And if you want to start playing an instrument, please, get on with it. You've got to start early and make it happen for you. Get yourself in a little band, even if you're not playing live at the minute. You'll thoroughly enjoy it. The best years of my life. I could never imagine when I was listening to that Bill Haley record with my dad when I was 5 that I'd still be doing it at 54 years of age and playing in a band with some of my heroes. I don't know if any of the Polecats are watching. I don't know if you know, but I'm an official reserve bass player for the Polecats when Phil can't make it.
Oh, really? Cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Which is an honor for me, and most people know that Doyley is official reserve guitarist as well when Boz can't make it. But so I've never, when I was young, I never thought that would be happening to me. So if you stick at it, you can make it happen, baby.
Thanks again. Thanks so much for being a part of the Slapstream. It was very enjoyable talking to you and learning from you, and thanks for showing all these little tricks, and I can't wait to see you play with any of these bands.
Oh, cheers, man. Well, we're going to be doing it soon. Keep an eye out. We've got to try and get back to some sort of music normality gig next year, haven't we? We're all missing it so much.
Thank you. Thanks again, and
cheers,
see
everybody.
you somewhere down the road.
I don't know who's watching, but I hope
lots of people are watching. You can access all the comments later on, like in the live chat. There's lots of them.
I was really nervous earlier on because I saw some of the people that you'd invited, and some people I knew I should definitely invite, but it made me nervous that some of the people that I really look up to are watching this. And I did seem
happy, so I think we had a good one.
I don't think I played my best tonight, but there I go. I've got an excuse that we haven't gigged for ages, but that's just that.
Well, you played from the heart. That's what counts.
Yeah. Next time I'll make sure I'm a little bit more oiled, let's say.
Thank you, Steve. Cheers, Mia, and cheers, Emily. You have the coolest dad, and I'll see you down the road.
Thank you. See you later.
All right, that was the 16th episode, Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville, featuring Steve Whitehouse. I'm so stoked that we had a chance to do this. I hope you are too. Thanks a lot for your support. Thanks a lot for these super chatters. We had we had a few of those, and this is the first time that I was able to have a super chat, the super sticker option. So thanks for letting me know how that works. So for the future. And also, if you want to support the show, please check out the links down below: Venmo and PayPal and Patreon. Lots of cool things on the Patreon. And thanks for Fernando from Barcelona for the designs. Obviously, thanks to Steve Whitehouse. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And there's lots of bass players that want to feature. I'm kind of booked for next 2 months, and I'm super excited about it. And I think it's gonna be a good one. At least this pandemic year brought something cool in the bass world. I hope it's cool. I think it is. And don't forget, never fret. slide it in smooth, and keep it in the groove. This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat. All my and all Steve links and Artist Lab based links are below the video, so follow us, and I'll see you next Saturday.